conversations that move us. SAFM, celebrating women, celebrating progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
In your sports this hour, Proteas target series victory against Australia and Rickus du Plessis counting down the days until he faces Chimaev. More details at 3:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
It certainly is the National Pulse. I know we talk on the eve of the national dialogue, and there's this ongoing conversation about national dialogue. Yes, no, if, what, maybe. We'll get the thoughts of Paddy Lehohla, not quite now, but later on in the second hour of the show. So looking forward to that conversation and getting his take on the national dialogue. But as we talk about that, this is the National Pulse. My name's Ashraf Garda. Good to connect with you. And you can move from listener to active participant by calling in live 086 000 2032, WhatsApp 0614 104 107, 0614 104 107, and that's text or voice note. And you can also connect via social media. If you just tweet us using the hashtag The National Pulse. So we'll talk about the USA as well and their plans imposing sanctions over illegal mineral extraction in the DRC, amongst many other things, as well as the National Shelter Movement of South Africa condemning SAPS withdrawal of GBV cases. It's an ongoing story, that, isn't it? But let's start first with the issue of taxis and e-hailing. Gauteng authorities continue to monitor the situation in Pimville, that's in Soweto, after a taxi and e-hailing vehicle, both taxi and e-hailing vehicles were torched outside the Maponya Mall, that's in Soweto, last night, right? So a few moments ago, the MEC for Roads and Transport in Gauteng, that's Kediboni Diale Tlabella, addressed the angry Soweto residents and promised to resolve their concerns. So let's find out exactly what has come out of it with Holisani Sitole, the SABC News reporter, covering the story. Appreciate your time as always on the National Pulse.
Hi, Ashraf. Good afternoon, and to the listeners.
Thank you. Right. So I understand that the MEC just a short while ago, in fact, addressed the residents of that area. What was said?
Ashraf, actually the MEC has assured the people that she's in talks with the taxi industry, continuous talks. She's hoping between the taxi industry and e-hailing services and also mall management, Maponya Mall management. You remember that this incident took place there, but she has assured them that they would like to have an amicable solution to see that nobody dies again as a result of this. And also to look in depth into the fact that she's saying that South Africans must feel safe to be moving around and to have a choice as to which mode of transport they want to use.
Well, I think that's the obvious thing, they say. But the reality is, so taxis or e-hailing services were torched last night. Two, I think, were torched. One person, I understand, died. And then there were also protests from the residents. What were they protesting about?
So they say enough is enough. So the protest also stems into the fact that the e-hailing drivers, they are providing a service that it's in a way being able to move, for example, the elderly, to move them from one place to the other where the taxis themselves cannot reach. And also the issue of safety, that they would like to see everyone who's going into the mall, be it that it's a shopper, be it that it's an employee, be it that it's an e-hailing driver or the taxi drivers themselves, that they are safe. Because if you look at it now, there's also been an incident where a minibus taxi has been touched. So actually it makes matters worse that people are losing more and more. We talk about the loss of lives. I mean, somebody has been touched, and then now the loss to properties and all that. And if nothing is done, intervention is done, this may continue, that there's going to be tensions between people who are supposed to be looking after each other.
Do you know what came through last night and then this morning as well, and certainly me listening to Thulas' show, you on SFM in the morning, is there's a sense amongst people of lawlessness. That means whatever one group thinks of the other group, there's a belief that people can do what they want because they can get away with it, and so be it. I mean, did that come through in today's conversation, not just from the commuters or the residents, but certainly from the MEC as well?
So it's the MEC most of the time. She's been in close talks with these people. We only got a brief, but the brief was around what her interventions are going to be in terms of that. But talking about the lawlessness and the approach on things, I mean, you speak to the e-hailing drivers around the Soweto and all that. They say this has actually started some time, not in a few weeks or so, because they speak about places like Southgate Mall and again here, that they were at some stage not allowed to pick up or to drop off. Because you remember there are issues, if you go even at Park Station, you'll be allowed to drop off, but then for you to come and pick up the people there, if you got a request, it's something that they wouldn't get. But we've seen even today when the people were barricading the roads with rocks and bricks, there were a group of people coming from the taxi industry, like they were trying to show them that actually they can be violent, and they couldn't. But you know, people are people. The community has had more numbers, and they ended up giving in.
How? So let's go back then to the angry, residents of that community. What do they ultimately want?
Actually, it's protection, Ashraf. For the protection of the people, as I said, that they say everyone must feel free and everyone must have a choice to choose what they want. Because at Maponya Mall, it's where people go. They get services. They say they get all the stores that in the past they will have to go to town or go to Sentinel for certain things. But they say it's okay that they are having it. But then they are saying the mall management must do away with the taxi rank that's inside the mall, because they believe that those are some of the things that causing tensions. And they also zoom back into history, as this is not the first time that vehicles were touched. And now what makes matters worse now is that a life has been lost, and there are several others who are in hospital. So now their main concern is that actually a stop must be put, an end to this must come.
But, and this has been going on, as you said, for a while. There's a sense that with the dawn of e-hailing, that the traditional taxis as we know them, and there's two types, traditional meter taxis and let's call them Zola Buds as we would understand them, right? There's a sense from some people that felt that who are these people coming to take over our turf? Now, I mean, that's suggesting, if I start a spaza shop in my area, nobody else can be in that area at all. Now, that sort of guarding of territory, I mean, clearly that sort of monopolizing is not acceptable. So who's driving that sense and expectation that nobody else can be here?
We yet to speak to the taxi industry about it, but we know in the past they've distanced themselves from such. Someone has actually talking about them rejecting. We've heard people saying, actually, why would you reject some change? Why wouldn't you want to go with the times? Because before there's all about, as you're saying, or before the quantums of the taxi industry, minibus taxis, there used to be trains, and before trains there used to be horses. Actually, then now why then when something that comes into the market, the owners of the bus systems and the trains, nobody protested against the taxi industry coming into the party. They just worked hand in hand with them. But then why is it them? There's this lawlessness and then rejection of something that's different.
Okay. Do you get a sense? So we know the commuters' demands. They want safety, but they want the options, right? What about organizations like Santaco? Did anybody else, maybe with you being on the ground, that you could pick up anything that was said today?
As I said, Ashraf, that we are yet to speak to them, to the taxi NTA and Santaco, to get their side and the sense of the story.
Okay, and you don't quite know at the moment what they're saying. We'll certainly talk to them as well later on the show today, I think at about 5:10, right? Just the last thing, right? What about the Maponya Mall itself? What have they said?
Ashraf, I think, you know what, there's been a lot of things that has been happening today. There's been so many angles to the story. In terms of the malls itself, we've seen one representative who came, and as they had a close session with the MEC. So we still have so many, like we zoom in different angles. there's a taxi that has been touched. We still need to get that angle. We just had a confirmation from the police and JMPD. We still need to get the malls itself to come into the party to say to us, what is it that's happening? We've got, e-hailing. We even had some people saying the e-hailing services in different locations like Pretoria, they want to come and join forces with those ones in solidarity. So there's a lot, actually. I think it's a story that's worth taking forward even tomorrow, looking into who's saying what and how are they going to approach, including the mall. Because you remember, in some places, I would like to believe even in Maponya Mall, it was the same case, that there was a designated area that were e-hailing services to try to resolve some of these challenges that they were supposed to pick up and drop off. But so we want to see that how does it go? But sometimes some of these things happen at night, and the issue taking us back to the lawlessness that's there in the country.
Do you get a sense, and I know, yes, you're going to listen to what Santaco says, and we'll do the same as well, but at this point in time, does anybody listening to the community on the ground and to the taxi owners, the e-hailing owners and others, that what would actually be a lasting win-win situation? Because ultimately, everybody needs to win, and that agreement must be lasting as opposed to just fleeting.
So what we found on the ground, what we had on the ground has been that actually the freedom that's there, the freedom that's there, that's enshrined in the Constitution taking us back to 1996, must be what everyone is allowed to exercise. So if I wake up and decide that I want to catch a minibus taxi, that's my choice. And if I want to take an e-hailing service, that should be my choice. But they also raise issues around the cost of, actually they feel like minibus taxis can be pricey. But also what we heard from some of the employees here, they are saying that at night when they knock off sometimes, they do need the e-hailing services. So it turns out, it seems like everybody needs each and everyone, but what they are calling for is peace in terms of let everyone operate, and then whoever wants to operate and whoever wants to choose what mode of transport they want to use, then let them be.
Well, that's what I think most people would be thinking. It's like, you know what, we must have choices. It's really up to us, and it's up to the market to deliver to our choices and give us the best experience possible so that we will use them and not somebody else. But anyway, Horisani Sithole, appreciate your time. Thanks for updating us on that. We'll certainly speak to Santaco as well later. But in fact, earlier on, there's an update on that story, which we'll play some of the sound of that right after this.
Last year's finalists, Stellies, are on a mission to graduate to this year's final, while Babina Nuku want to do the talking on the battlefield. This is the MTN8 First Leg Semi-Final. Wafa Wafa. Don't miss out on Stellenbosch FC versus Sekhukhune United on Saturday, 16 August at 5:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
What is Overtrail? Is it off the beaten path, over the edge of comfort, or the thrill of the road less taken? It's over every bridge, every obstacle, every trail, and over to that view that takes your breath away. Overtrail means going further, exploring deeper, surrounded by the comfort and sophistication of a luxury SUV. It's this spirit that inspired the Overtrail project. Experience Overtrail in the LX and GX range. Lexus. Experience amazing.
September 5 is Casual Day. Time to get your Casual Day sticker and gear in support of persons with disabilities. Looking beyond the label, your contribution makes a tangible impact. Visit www.ncpd.org.za. Many thanks from the National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities.
This is an SABC supported initiative.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, I need to get your thoughts, in terms of what you felt about when you heard last night that two of these cars were burnt and one of the drivers, both injured, but one of them killed, sadly so, tragically so, and the other is the ongoing protest and really what would be the lasting solutions. I don't know. I must tell you now, I probably would have had the same discussion 10 years ago when e-hailing services came to the fore, and it seems like this story continues. John in Polokwane, we've just lost John. Brian in Cape Town, go for it. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, good indeed, right? What's your point?
I've got an advice for the taxi owners, the taxi drivers. They must just diversify their portfolio and buy Uber cars and start also venturing into Uber. And they can have their own other taxis, the Quantums and what have you, but they must just diversify. If someone wants to have a business, they are running a business, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone wants to run a business and they see that there's a competition, no one goes out killing people or stopping people from operating. So they should do the same. Just diversify.
Well, look, I mean, I think it's maybe easier said than done in terms of just diversify, because they may feel they don't want to get into other spaces. However, I think your point, which is right, is that they must understand that the terrain changes every week or every year. And like all markets, if we don't adapt to the changes, then we're going to lose market share, isn't it?
Exactly. The reason why they won't diversify is because they know that SARS will be after them. And they have to also pay taxes, because I'm definitely sure that most of them, they do not pay taxes. Okay, some of them they do, but I'm sure maybe some of them they don't pay taxes. Hence, they don't want to obviously diversify into other ventures of or rather different kinds of other transportation. I mean, the other gentleman, he made a very good point to say, before we used to use horses, trains, buses, and then taxis, and then now there's Uber. So they should also stay with the trends and just, also be trendy.
Yeah, point made.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Brian in Cape Town. Let's go to Tsepo in Pretoria. Tsepo, what's your point?
Ashraf.
Yeah, you're live.
Yeah, look, here's the thing, my brother. I don't have a solution for the taxis and stuff. I have a solution for crime. The way that this guy killed this guy yesterday, really, I can tell you if there was a death penalty, those people would think twice. We ask for death penalty every day. Media, the likes of yourselves and many other people will tell you there's no study that shows that death penalty works. Let me tell you for free. The apartheid government, there was less crime mainly because there was death penalty in this country. Now, if anybody wants to say, no, that was not the reason, they must bring us the proof that actually that was not the reason. Because today we don't have death penalty, but people are dying like flies in this country. So you can't negotiate this kind of criminals in South Africa. You can't have a law that says stuff them in prison and every 3 months the president releases them. So because we know they're gonna go for prison for 6 months, in 6 months we're gonna be told prisons are overcrowded, they need to go out, and they come and do the same thing again. You need to finish these people through. I can tell you, if you blatantly kill somebody like that, and you even have time to burn their car while everybody's looking, only death penalty can solve that kind of a crime.
I hear you. I think there's really two parts of it. The death penalty that you talk about, which we touched on the other day. But the broader issue is why do people feel that they are the only ones to have the right to own that space? What is it that suggests that they can effectively be a law unto themselves? Or am I misreading the situation? If I am, you tell me. Let's get to another Tsepo, this time in Pretoria too. Tsepo, go for it. Hello. Tsepo, hi, you live?
Sure.
Yeah, you're live on the air. Go for it. What's your point?
Yes, man. I don't think it is necessary to echo or to repeat the sentiments that have been widely spread since this morning. My concern, I live in Pretoria and I use Uber a lot. And in Pretoria, there is a number of places that you cannot request an Uber to take you to. And this is around the Gauteng stations. And what bothers me is that that is meted out to the Uber and the Bolt drivers, it is so in the presence of the Metro Police. And at stages I've seen it when even your traditional SAPS, they do not do anything. And this creates a problem. I'm saying if the Metro Police are not going to protect these guys and us as the as the users of the Ubers, who is going to protect them? And this is where my biggest problem lies in Pretoria to say, but it cannot be, it should not be, and it must not be allowed.
Okay, got that. Must not be allowed. You see, that's the point. There's a lack of protection. The moment people feel threatened in a space like, okay, let's knock the others off. I mean, can we really do that? The fact is we are doing it, because this is not the first time we've heard the story. Anonymous, I understand you used to work for Santaco, right? So go for it. Hello.
Actually, I didn't work for. I did work for them.
Oh, okay.
So, and I did strategic work, and after that, I also did work for the Gauteng transport. Now, that's my point. One, what's happening is sad, but it's also reflective of resistance to change. At the time, they were warned of the trends and what the changing customer preferences, but they chose to ignore it. Now, this is very sad as well, because this is one of the biggest industries that blacks can claim, and yet, unfortunately, it has not been formalized. And one of the callers mentioned that the problem here is that people don't want to pay taxes. Now, you cannot grow an industry if you're not compliant. So therefore, for me, what is happening, had Santaco and its leaders and everyone involved understood that this is business. You are operating a competitive environment, and competition is part of the game. So therefore, then you need to mold and remodel yourself so that you are able to compete in this particular space. I mean, I want to tell you something, that is important. Mm-hmm. The taxi industry can do a lot. For example, they go into areas where many transport industry players cannot go. They go into those places. I mean, imagine how many goods and services are transported every day. There are courier companies that will not match the likes of Santaco, only if they started being thinking, So if people change and to adapt to the environment that is changing, unfortunately, they're going to start using or resorting to violence when they can just use their brains and the power of their collectivism. Why are they not owning petrol stations? Why are they not owning tire businesses? Because the only obsession is the 5 rands, 10 rands, and people die for that. Thank you.
Okay, got that. Thank you for that. There's more thoughts from you. Let's pick up all of that. In fact, we'll get to some of the voice notes too. So here's another one, and some of you are preferring to remain anonymous. But seriously, I think 2 parts. What are the issues as you see it? Why is this ongoing? What for you is the lasting solution? Anonymous, hi.
Hello, Ashraf.
Yeah, you're live. Go for it.
Yes. Hey, I'm one of the hailing driver in Bloemfontein.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I foresee what is happening there in Maponya Mall, because here in Bloemfontein, those meter cap cars, they are breaking our cars. They are doing as they please, and there's no one who's accounting on that.
So they're breaking cars, and there's no one accounting on it. And are you able to know why they're breaking cars? I mean, I have a sense, but what do they say, if anything?
Yeah, like here in Bloemfontein, we are trying. There are those spots that we are not going at all. Like, we are not going at all. But even if they can just meet you driving out there, they are just breaking your car. And even if you can report to the police station, like, there is no action. From there, they are working with traffic cops.
They are working with the traffic cops. Sure. Okay. Thank you for that, Anonymous. There's more, lots more people wanting to talk. And I think it's completely understandable, because every few months when this sort of thing surfaces in different parts of the country, inevitably there are casualties. 3:30, here's the news headlines.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, Eswatini police say 3 suspects wanted in connection with the murder of a police officer in Skumansdal in Mpumalanga a week ago have been killed in Eswatini. Emergency services and law enforcement officials have converged at Sound Coast Beach in Durban, where a small aircraft has crashed into the sea, and firefighters in western Greece say they've gained ground against a wildfire outside the city of Patras. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM
guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in Johannesburg, slow moving towards Crown Interchange, the N3 both ways in Alexandra, queuing at London Road due to a crash in the area, and London Road is closed at the N3 highway due to a crash, so use alternative routes. In KZN, the N3 eastbound, a stationary truck at Cliffdale causing delays. Umgeni Road westbound, slow moving through Springfield Park, and the N2 southbound, queuing at the M41 gateway exit. In Cape Town, the N1 inbound has a crash reported before the N7 highway. The N2 inbound is slow moving towards the R300 highway, and Oudtshoorn in Sun Valley has a crash reported near Silvermine Nature Reserve. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Tumi is our very own Minister of Sport. Tumi, what's your big story today?
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Proteas batter Tristan Stubbs says that their main aim is to go for a series win when they face Australia in the third and final T20 International on Saturday. South Africa beat the home side by a comprehensive 53 runs in the second match on Tuesday, levelling the series at 1-1 and setting up what is effectively a mouth-watering final this weekend. And Stubbs says winning a series against Australia in their own backyard would definitely mean a lot to them.
I think hopefully with better communication with DSAC, DSAC will understand that you don't make athletes who can play in the Olympics. It's not a 6-month plan. You know, if you look at what the United Kingdom did when they hosted the Olympics, they started planning and helping their athletes to become winners 15 years before the event, and that's the program that we need to have supported by DSAC and in fact Lotto. You know what the frustrating part is that you know if only that funding could be consistent over a 15-year period or longer.
Apologies for the wrong clip. That is Tennis South Africa President Gavin Crooks, who has confirmed that he's going to meet with Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, basically to discuss the pressing issues affecting the sport. Now, with the Sports Ministry cutting budgets across multiple sporting codes, Crooks revealed that Tennis South Africa's allocation has been reduced by 2 million rand, and it will definitely be a matter on the table during the meeting in hopes of securing more stable funding. But going back to cricket, England batter Joe Root says that he hopes his experience of 158 tests makes him better equipped than ever to end a victory drought in Australia. This is as he gears up for the upcoming Ashes series. Now, Root has accumulated over 13,000 runs in tests, trialling only India's great Sachin Tendulkar. Now, despite his prolific record, the 34-year-old is yet to win a test or score a test century in Australia, when he averages 35.68 from 27 innings with 9 half centuries. Then in football, Cape Town Spurs are reportedly taking their battle to SAFA in a bid to block winger Asanele Velebai's free transfer to Kaizer Chiefs. The Soweto Giants have already unveiled Velebai as their player, even assigning him a jersey number just today after the Premier Soccer League Dispute Resolution Chamber cleared the move. Now, according to SABC Sport, Spurs maintain that they still have a binding contract with the 22-year-old despite the relegation to the amateur ranks. However, on Monday, the DRC ruled that the agreement was null and void because Spurs no longer hold professional status. Elsewhere, Amakosi assistant coach Cedric says that head coach Nasruddin Nabi still has some sort of influence on the team. This is despite being back home in Tunisia. Chiefs claimed a 1-0 win over Polokwane City yesterday, which was the second win for Amakosi without Nabi on the bench. But Cedric says that Nabi trusts them to do the lineup and the tactical plan for the games.
We are always in contact with the head coach, but he trusts our experience, he trusts our knowledge too, because we are the people that are on the field every day, and the people that are on the field are those that they feel the vibe on the field. They see every day what is happening. They see the trainings, who can do what, and who can do the different combinations. as well, he trusts us as well to make the lineup. But as he's the head coach as well, he's informed on a daily basis.
Elsewhere, Tottenham have said that they're disgusted by the racial abuse received by forward Matthijs Tel. This is after their defeat by Paris Saint-Germain in the UEFA Super Cup. The club, who lost 4-3 on penalties after letting slip a 2-goal lead, said that people had sent abusive messages to Tel on social media, and those that did so were nothing but cowards. Tel came on as a substitute in the 79th minute and was one of the 2 Spurs players who failed to convert from the spot in the penalty shootout. Then finally, Dricus du Plessis is all set to defend his 3rd middleweight title against Khamzat Chimaev in a contest that promises to definitely be fireworks. It's actually going to be the headline of the UFC 319 card. Both men remain undefeated in the promotion, although come Saturday 16 will no longer be the case, and we'll hear from du Plessis what he has to say with regards to his opponent on Saturday. That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, looking forward to that. Lots to consider, isn't it? Yeah. By the way, just the point, I see Pirate supporters are rather, yeah. Okay. We'll move on. Thank you. Bye.
James, congrats on the babies.
Yeah, thanks. It's a wild ride.
You're a new dad, 2 babies, 0 sleep, and 1 car that apparently couldn't cope.
Yeah, the hatchback was my baby, but it just didn't have enough space for my 2 new babies.
And are you happy with the price when you sold to WeBuyCars?
Very. We've even got some extra cash to splurge on one of those fancy prams that you basically need a license for.
Good luck, James. WeBuyCars, geared for family, geared for you.
The reigning champs, Amapagania, want to demonstrate that they have a consistent winning formula. But 2024 semi-finalists, Masandawana, say this time around they will advance to the final. This is the MTN 8 First Leg semi-final. Wafa wafa! Catch Orlando Pirates versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday, 16 August at 2 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, we're going to connect with a story about the U.S. sanctions against rather over illegal mining or mineral extraction in the DRC in a moment. But let's get some of your thoughts first.
Ashraf and Police FM listeners, good afternoon. My name is Tulani Nzima in Croydon. Ashraf, we blame nobody but the government. They are very slow when it comes to creating or regulating the e-hailing industry. For me, it becomes an unfair advantage that you've got people who are free to do anything, yet you've got a taxi industry that is heavily regulated. Government needs to deal with this issue as a matter of urgency so that you don't lose people. Thank you.
Well, interesting. I mean, you see that contradiction in terms of how that industry is being regulated. Andries in Bloemfontein. Hi, Andries.
Okay, Ashraf, for the first time caller.
Oh, wait, Phineas wants to give you applause, man.
Okay, thanks. You see what? The problem here lies exactly what that guy just talked about. That is the government failing the people. In fact, these people are just being allowed to operate. I think sometimes they don't even have got the permits to operate. Who's giving them in fact, the local government should be the ones who are giving the permits for the taxis. The taxis, in fact, even as you can see what they are doing in the streets, they stop everywhere. They do everything they like. I think even these taxis are more than they should be. That's why there's a problem with this thing of taxis being jealous of this e-hailing guys.
Well, you see, I mean, the reality is something has to be able to be moving to a position of lasting justice here. So we normally want to just say well done to first-time callers. You're one of them.
Thank you.
There we are. Got your applause for you. Let's get others too. There's another voice note we're going to play in just a moment. What we'll do? No, in fact, we'll get to our guest right after this.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, the United States is, we are very preoccupied with them as a country anyway, but now they've imposed sanctions on an armed group in the eastern DRC, as well as 3 companies, accusing them of profiting from illegal mineral trade. According to the U.S. officials, the group is forcing civilians into labor and executing people in mining territories, something, obviously, which is against the law. So we're going to connect with the chief editor of the Kinshasa Times in a moment or so, but let's just do that. As we do that, there's some voice notes we can play first.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon, South Africa. Ashraf, the guy who's talking about the death penalty, he's talking the truth. Go and look in Botswana. Do that thing in Botswana. There's no such crimes in Botswana. You kill me, and after 2 days you are out. Go to Botswana and kill somebody. Go there and kill somebody. That people will show you something. Now, there's no laws in South Africa. Human rights. A criminal got rights. He can kill you in your house, but still he got a right. South Africa is lawless.
Well, listen, I hear that all the time, the sense of lawlessness. One is people committing crimes with impunity, but the other is the fact that they feel they can do what they want. So whatever the regulations are, it's a case of so what. Here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I think in this country we just need a referendum to bring back the death penalty, not this dialogue. What? I think it's not going to help us. Referendum is going to help us. Look how people are getting killed in this country. They're getting killed like flies, man. Anonymous and Kimberley.
But you haven't said what is the referendum about. I'm sensing you talking about the death penalty, but you haven't quite spelled it out. I wonder, you think it's time for that? But maybe that's what the national dialogue may well raise as one of the 20 issues that impacts our country. Here's another.
Afternoon to you, Ashraf. This is Mabena in Mpumalanga, Middelburg. You know, you are going to speak to Santaco as the organization. They are probably going to deny, to give them a benefit of the doubt. Let's say they don't even know. They'll claim that we are not sure. We don't know if this is our members or what. Let the investigations continue. But now, since we know taxi industry to be a dirty industry where there are killings, there are extortions and all these things in it. Probably the people on the ground, though, it's them who are terrorizing the e-hailing people without the management, let's say the leadership being Santaco, not being aware of it. Or maybe they are aware, but like I say, let's give them a benefit of a doubt. But yeah, it's a messy situation. I don't know.
Okay, got that. Well, look, that part we've heard often. We have no idea. It's not official Santaco policy. But the problem is, what then is their oversight regarding these taxis? If they always don't know, then how much do they know? Let's find out about what do we know regarding the DRC. So that earlier point, U.S. imposing sanctions on an armed group in the eastern DRC, as well as 3 other companies accusing them of profiting from illegal mining trade. With me is Amy Zoveni, who's the chief editor of the Kinshasa Times. Appreciate you connecting to us on the National Pulse.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, thank you very much for your time, right? So let's talk about this sanctions imposed. Do I take it that's expected?
Yeah, in fact, the United States is very much interested in trying to sanitize, if I may say, the mining exploitation in eastern DRC, mostly in the rebel-held territories in eastern DRC. And that is one of the many reasons that have led the Trump administration to impose sanctions on these illegal mining entities operating in the eastern part of the DRC.
Okay, tell me more about this illegal mining activity. To what extent does it exist?
It's mostly related to the coltan mines in a territory known as Rubaya, still controlled by the rebels, and most of the minerals extracted from Rubaya are first transported into the country of Rwanda and then are relabeled as being produced in Rwanda before being further exported to other destinations. And that does not seem to sit well with the Trump administration.
Why, just to be clear, why does it not sit well with them?
Simply because it is not following the proper routes. You would know that these territories are pretty much into what would be regarded as a lawlessness, a part of the country that still evades the proper authority of the state. And in June, the United States has been involved into brokering a peace deal between Rwanda and the DRC. And the one component of that deal is to also promote economic activities in more proper and legal channels. And that is one of the reasons why this is being a case now.
So now the imposition of sanctions on the armed group, I mean, who are they and other companies? What implications would that then have? Enable, from a U.S. perspective, to get what they want out of it, which is, the not profiting from illegal mining trade?
That would first enable or make it possible to disable the mafia network that is fueling the conflict. The conflict in Eastern DRC, as amongst other sources, the illegal exploitation of minerals that is funding it. So in so doing, it would, as it were, deprive those negative forces from a key source that is fueling and enabling them to purchase weapons and to continue creating insecurity. That's on the one end. And on the other end, it will pave the way for a conducive environment where United States interests could be channeled and ultimately try and enable the United States to extract minerals from that part of the country.
What about, you talk about the rebel owned or the rebel hold, right? What about the rest of the DRC proper in terms of government? What do they say about this?
Well, the rest of the DRC welcomes the decision because sanctions have always have the effect of either disabling, as I've said, the mafia networks, or at least drastically reducing their effectiveness. Now, in the DRC, it's not just the eastern part of the country. We also have the south eastern part of the country, which is very rich in cobalt and in copper, where there is proper industrial mining activities happening.
Where is this likely to end? I mean, there's been a sense of, it's a critical country in Africa and in the world in terms of its size and its mineral resources, but it's been plagued by so many issues of instability for a while now. Where do you think? I mean, what is needed for all these issues around government and rebels and the illegal mining and the instability to end?
Well, that would require efforts first from the domestic part of the DRC, meaning the government should be able to try and build proper military in order to ensure security across national territory. So that's on the one hand, the DRC taking its responsibility to have proper military that guarantees nationwide security. On the other hand, there should be at the regional level these peace efforts that are being undertaken. We should make sure that agreements are not simply signed and are shelved to gather yellow dust. These agreements should, in fact, also be implemented. That is why we now have more international pressure through the United States and through the states of Qatar that now are brokering these peace agreements. So at regional level, it would require agreements not only being signed, but also being implemented. These, I think, are the two levels that would allow for sustainable peace to be restored to Eastern DRC.
Just the last thing, I mean, what's the role of the African Union or even SADC in all of this? The different regions here?
SADC has played a key role in enabling, for instance, the deployment of the SADC mission including South African force. But that now that the negotiations have been taken over by the US and by Doha, the SADC mission is progressively withdrawing within the DRC. So the regional effort has done its part. And on the other end, we have the African Union, which also has facilitated two processes, the one known as the Luanda process with former President Lorenzo, and the other one known as the Nairobi process. Both of the processes now have been merged and are now put under the aegis of Doha and the United States.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it. Amy Zoveni, Chief Editor of the Kinshasa Times. Much appreciate your time.
Central African Republic have a secret plan to shock the host. However, Taifa Stars want to continue with their winning rhythm. This is the Total Energies African Nations Championship 2024. Experience spectacular action of African football. Central African Republic versus Tanzania. The Saturday 16 August at 7 p.m. Live everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM celebrates its 89th birthday this month by giving listeners an exclusive opportunity to attend the prestigious Joy of Jazz taking place at the Sandton Convention Center from the 26th to the 28th of September 2025. To stand a chance to win these sought-after tickets, simply SMS SAFM 89 followed by your name to 41391 and stay tuned to SAFM as we could be calling you. SAFM is the official media partner for the Dipala stage at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. Entries open from the 7th of August and close on the 31st of August 2025. Winners will be randomly selected and called from the 1st of September 2025. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. T's and C's apply. You're listening to the National Pulse.
Right, from an issue in the DRC to the problems in South Africa. This being Women's Month, again, those problems are, the solutions and the problems often are amplified, isn't it? Now, the National Shelter Movement of South Africa says they are concerned about ongoing practices by some SAPS officers. And what are those practices? The practices of encouraging or permitting the withdrawal of gender-based violence cases. So you've got that cases around gender-based violence, and they've been withdrawn. Why so? Well, certainly that's the view that's pushing survivors to drop charges is a betrayal of justice in this case here. Let's find out more about it with Anissa Musa, who's the National Coordinator for the National Shelter Movement of South Africa. Anissa, I appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Thank you for having me on, and good afternoon to all the listeners.
Good afternoon. How big an issue is this?
So if you look at it as a priority, and if you look at women as half of our population, and you look at gender-based violence being a pandemic, a disaster, with the highest prevalence of rape in the world, then I would say that cases being withdrawn is a big issue because it speaks to the safety of survivors, the perpetuation of gender-based violence going forward by sending women home to unsafe spaces.
So maybe tell us more when you say, sending them home to unsafe spaces. So what happens first? I mean, there's an attack on women, right? And therefore they are victims already. So then what happens to them next?
So, so that's in cases where what we call IPV, which is your intimate partner violence. So, and I've said this in previous programs, is domestic violence viewed as a crime by police officers, or is it shunned like it's a domestic issue, and so it doesn't deserve attention or our time? And so women are sent back to their homes where the perpetrator is a partner, and then there's those crimes that happen out on the street. Again, we talk about stigma, we talk about gender roles, we talk about, let's say, for example, what was she doing there that time? Was it her fault? Did she say no? So they go through secondary traumatization, but also because they received in a police station, that's their first point of contact, wanting to try and, get themselves out of the situation. And then someone tells them that, you know what, I'm sorry, we can't help you. They're traumatized emotionally, they're not in the right space. And then they sent back without a resolve. That's devastating, but also life-threatening.
So who actually sends them back? And how do they come to that decision to say, send this person back home?
So that will happen for different reasons. I think someone, if they go to the police station and the police officers are not receptive, or they dismissive, or they might say, you know what, there's not enough evidence, or they might say, no, you need to go to a police station where it happened. So, those are some of the, just at the top of my head, some of the reasons why they would be sent back, or there's no one to take your case or to take your report or take your statement. So, there's various reasons, but it also has to do with negligence and malpractice in a way.
I mean, I see from your official statement, you talk about it as this is not a procedural failure, it's a betrayal of justice. Do you get a sense, based upon what you've just said, that in fact those in positions of power who are allowing this to happen are aware that in fact it's a betrayal of justice? Or is the apathy so high they can't even see the difference? They don't even know?
I think when we talk about the betrayal of justice, I think we need to remember that victims of any crime expect that they're going to get, there's that trust in the justice system or in the law that's going to protect them. And then when, like I said, when you turned away and told that, sorry, we can't help you, then where do you go? So I think that's where the element of betrayal comes and the trust is broken in the justice system. Also we'll have, let's say, for example, reports of a woman calls the police comes to a domestic violence scene, and even instances where local police officer knows the perpetrator in the area and just writes it off as, oh, it's a relationship issue, you can reconcile, you can make it up, it's got nothing to do with us, and they leave not realizing that the woman is in danger. And I think when we talk about femicide, we place women at risk of being killed by their partners or even by a stranger on the street when we don't take cries for help seriously.
So when you talk then about no more, I'm looking at your statement, no more quiet dismissals, no more forced reconciliations, no more sending women back to danger. The justice system must protect women, right? If not, the state is complicit in this violence. Here's the point, maybe just to end with, right? I mean, it's a very important wish list, right? How are you going to ensure that those that you are targeting will actually listen to you and change their ways?
I think we as the NSM have always advocated and lobbying for women's rights, and I think it's something that we need to persist in. And the one thing that, and it's also the pillar one of the National Strategic Plan for Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, which is accountability in leadership. And we also often refer to multi-sectoral, multi-dimensional, multi-level interventions that requires, whether it be Department of Social Development, whether it be Department of Justice, all these need to come together. And the Department of Justice, for example, has to hold officers accountable when there's reports of misconduct. And I think also there has to be a high level of accountability. There has to be rigorous oversight of incidents of police officers not. We had recent cases and reports of a police officer turning a firearm on, killing his girlfriend, his brother, and then turning the firearm on himself. And we know that the prevalence of gender-based violence amongst police officers, whether they perpetrators or they victims, is also high. We don't have statistics of that in South Africa, but that's a reality, and we see it, we hear of it, we know it. Trauma levels are high in police stations. They deal with crime all the time.
Well, I mean, bottom line, they're not just high, but they're high, unacceptable, and something has to change. And clearly, the organisation trying to do just that. Anissa Musa, appreciate your time here on the National Pulse. Anissa is the National Coordinator for the National Shelter Movement of South Africa. There we are. And ultimately, GBV, gender-based violence, under attack, and nothing appears to be changing. And I can probably apply that same statement to like 10 other things in our country. But first things first, let's get the news now. Just gone 4 o'clock. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the top stories, suspects wanted for murder killed in Eswatini, and a small aircraft crashed into the sea in Durban. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good afternoon. Eswatini police say 3 suspects wanted in connection with the murder of a police officer in Schoemansdal, Mpumalanga, a week ago have been killed in Eswatini. The 3 were traced to the Sishweleni region. 2 of them opened fire when they noticed the police. The Royal Eswatini police say they returned fire and fatally wounded the 2. They say the 3rd suspect shot himself before he could be arrested. South Africa's National Police spokesperson Athlenda Mathe has praised the cross-border operation between SAPS and Royal Eswatini Police.
Thursday, early hours of the 14th of August, the Royal Eswatini Police traced these 3 suspects. The first 2 suspects were shot at a hideout in the Sishweleni region in Eswatini. They were fatally wounded as they charged at police when police announced their arrival. The 3rd suspect was then also located in the same vicinity. He allegedly committed suicide before police could arrest him.
Sergeant Loris Mtweni was shot and killed in a business robbery involving 7 heavily armed men in Schoemansdal in Mpumalanga on Friday. According to the police, a suspect was arrested the following day, and further investigation pointed to the involvement of the men in Eswatini. Sergeant Mtweni will be laid to rest on Saturday in Schoemansdal. Emergency services and law enforcement officials have converged at Suncoast Beach in Durban, where a small aircraft has crashed into the sea. ALS paramedic spokesperson Gareth Jamieson says a video is doing the rounds on social media showing the small aircraft doing an aerial display before hitting the surf. Suncoast Beach is near Durban's Virginia Airport. Jamieson elaborates.
Initial reports are that the light aircraft was doing displays and crashed into the ocean. NSRI and lifeguards are currently at the site, and paramedics are standing by on the shoreline for medical assistance.
The man accused of ordering a hit on DJ Somebody, Katiso KT Molefe, will find out next week, Wednesday, whether he will be released on bail. Molefe has applied for bail at the Alexandra Magistrates Court north of Johannesburg. He was arrested in July in connection with the murders of Opa Sifuga, also known as DJ Somebody, and Hector Butelezi, also known as DJ Ventos. In opposing bail, State Prosecutor Ketokwa Kengumane says Molefe should not be released as he had previously travelled to the United Kingdom using a fraudulent passport and a different name.
When he visited UK, the name that he used then was David Lebitza. That has been admitted, but as to reason that that name was used, that was never explained to the court as why was that name used. And the issue of the passport there as well, that the passport that he used there was a fraudulent passport. The state submitted to the court that a consideration that this court has to make. That at some stage he left the country, he went to the foreign country by using a fraudulent passport, by using the name that was not his real name. That is a consideration that this court has to make when
Firefighters in western Greece say they've gained ground against a wildfire outside the city of Patras. It is Greece's main port to Italy. Wildfires caused by arsonists and thunderstorms fanned by a heat wave and strong winds wreaked destruction across southern Europe on Wednesday, burning homes and forcing thousands of residents and tourists to flee. The BBC's Sasha Sklikta has the details.
The fire department said the situation in Patras was much improved after a fierce overnight struggle, though scattered pockets of flames remained and the fire was still active in the eastern outskirts. On Wednesday, a children's hospital and a retirement home had to be evacuated as the flames had moved dangerously close. Greek police say they've arrested a 25-year-old man on suspicion of starting one of the 4 blazes that erupted outside Patras on Tuesday.
Recapping the top story, Eswatini police say 3 suspects wanted in connection with the murder of a police officer in Skumansdal, Mpumalanga, a week ago have been killed in Eswatini. I am Ondilambana for SFM News headlines at 4:30.
In sports, the Sawa NPC to launch 2025 Soweto Marathon Edition end of August. Stubbs hails Brevis and Senna beats Manarino to reach Cincinnati last 8. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 both ways in Alexandra queuing at London Road due to a crash in the area, and London Road is closed at the N3 highway due to a crash, so you're encouraged to use alternative routes. In KZN, the N3 eastbound has a stationary truck reported at Cliffdale that's causing delays, and the N2 southbound a crash before the M25 Commercial Highway. In Cape Town, Albert Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock, and Lesbiac Parkway outbound slow moving through Observatory. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This year, the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz Festival presents 3 unforgettable days deep in the art and heart of jazz. From the 26th, 27th and 28th of September, Umu Sankare, Ababemu, Jasmia Horn, Silent Law and the Noisemakers, Najbonk Trio, Michelle Ndingio-Cello, Valencini, Gabby Mutuba, and over 50 world-class acts will be ready to welcome you and yours to 4 magnificent stages of the Sandton Convention Center. Take me there. Buy your tickets at Ticketmaster now.
4-time World Rugby champions, the Springboks, want to emphasize their winning mentality. However, the Wallabies are going all out to upset the reigning global champs. This is the Rugby Championship. Experience world-class rugby action. South Africa collides with Australia on Saturday, 16 August at 5:10, live on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This Women's Month, SAFM stands with the women shaping South Africa's future. Under the theme, Building Resilient Economies for All, we honor the pioneers, the problem solvers, and the everyday heroes driving change. Stay tuned as SAFM brings you powerful stories and meaningful conversations that move us. SAFM, celebrating women, celebrating progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, Party Lahotla says that the national dialogue is problematic and should have been held before the elections. We'll talk to him about that around 4:45. Also, being a Thursday, we have the regular Channel Africa G20 crossing, so don't forget that comes up shortly. It means it's time for me to talk to you and hear some of your thoughts.
The SFM listener, you see this Talimpofu and the Zuma's family, they always appear on the TV saying the words which like actually you cannot even understand. They always like appearing for no apparent reason, and I don't know, the drama queen and the drama kings. You know, I don't know like actually what they look with. This Zuma is her daughter and so on. It's Talimpofu. What are they doing there? People never voted them to see them on the TV saying some Balka words. They voted them thinking their life will change.
Okay, I think context is needed there. Here's another.
Afternoon, Ashraf. This is Anele Ndaben. It looked like the e-hailing transport mode. It is a threat to the black taxi operators because I'm residing next to Phoenix here in Durban. There is no problem for the e-hailing drivers to operate around Phoenix, but when it comes to the black community, hey, they've got a problem. They've got a problem. They are being chased. They are being robbed money. They are being... Why the e-hailing transport mode? It is only the threat to the black taxi operators. Will you please, Ashraf, get the taxi industry, please. They must answer this question.
Okay, well, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of an entire community. It's almost impossible to pin it down, but I hear what you're saying, and if anybody knows better, then they can certainly tell us. Thank you for that, right? There's more on that, on the similar issue.
Ashraf, taxis are a problem in this country. It's not just Joburg, it's all over. And it's not just e-hailing drivers that are being harassed and tormented by these taxi drivers, even people with private cars as well. You can't pick someone up on the road anymore because these taxi people will come and harass you for picking either a friend or a relative, saying you're stealing one of their customers. This is a democratic country. Like, I bought my car, I never said who's gonna go in that car. I said it was my car and it was private, so I have all the right to pick whoever I choose from the street to give them a lift. And yet these taxi drivers come and say we're stealing our people. We're stealing their people. It's such a mafia thing.
Well, I think it is. I mean, once I took a Gautrain, in fact, to Pretoria, and then you get off there, I think it was Hatfield, and then you get off and you want to take an Uber to wherever you needed to go next, and like, no, don't take it here, go 500 meters down, go around the corner, there you can do it. If you hear, the other taxi drivers will not allow it. So that's been going on, and going on, and going on.
Ashraf, there was an incident here in Cape Town where a young lady was raped over the weekend. She went to the Delft police station to report it. The police turned her away, saying that it's a family issue. She must resolve it with the family. How dare? What if those policemen, it was their daughter that was raped? She was turned away, and people were marching today for that incident.
Well, you see, that's, again, they're just... I mean, we just hear too many of those stories, really, and it's very, very sad.
Yes, good afternoon. You see, when you go to a mall, you will find ShopRite, Pick n Pay, Checkers, all in the same mall. And as a customer, it is entirely up to you to choose where you want to shop. Do you understand? So the problem is that the taxi association were given too much freedom by the government from the start, and that is where the problem lies. What's happening in Mabonya Mall is just a small portion of what we as the commuters are capable of doing. We can bring this taxi association of theirs to a standstill if it needs to be. Thank you.
I think your point is spot on. I mean, you want to shop, you can name any store you like, supermarket. Can you imagine if someone tells you, you must go into this store or else? It's happening with the taxis.
Hi, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Ashraf, Operation Dudula. They were created only to target foreigners. I believe so. And after targeting foreigners, if they reach their goal, what they will do next? Here is a war between hailing and taxi, putting the life of people in danger. What they are going to do with it? Nothing. Thank you, Jose, Cape Town.
What are they going to do? Nothing? Oof. Okay, here's another.
Alpha, good afternoon. No, the taxi people they think that the bosses of this country. The problem in this country is the taxi people and the foreign nationals. Taxi people and the foreign nationals are the problem in this country, Alpha.
Okay, let's now, of course, every Thursday we connect with Channel Africa as part of the countdown to G20. You'll also hear the voice of Tami Ngobeni on behalf of Channel Africa as we connect SAFM, Channel Africa, G20.
Infrastructure development, and this is a simulcast that we do between Channel Africa's Africa in Business and SFM's The National Pulse with Ashram Garda. So we do know that South Africa's National Treasury and the African Development Bank Group are jointly supporting cross-border infrastructure on the African continent, and one way that they're wanting to do this is through what has been termed the Legacy Initiative, the Ubuntu approach. Quite an interesting title there, and Ubuntu speaking directly to the values and the principles that are held intrinsic to South Africa's people. Now, this is a priority project under South Africa's G20 Infrastructure Working Group. And I tell you what, Ashraf, this continues to be not only of continental concern, but global focus as well.
Well, I suppose it is a concern and should pique the interest of all our listeners, right? So this G20 PIC perspective paper then using, and this is what it is, using listed and unlisted financial instruments as a means to funding infrastructure on the continent. It notes that infrastructure financing on the African continent faces several challenges, especially weak credit worthiness and poor project structuring, which, as you know, would then hinder investment. No documents, no investment. So that is a big issue, Tommy.
And also another issue is the fact that African governments are typically spending between 3 to 4% of their GDP towards infrastructure development. And that is woefully underfinanced. But let's get a better perspective of this. And joining us this afternoon is Lungile Mashele, who is co-author of the paper Using Listed and Unlisted Financial Instruments to Fund Infrastructure on the Continent. A very good afternoon to you, and welcome to our simulcast this afternoon focusing on the G20.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me.
So the main question here is infrastructure development. That has very much become a buzzword on the African continent and also for the G20. Why is it such a central topic at the G20 discussions right now? And perhaps if you could just expand on that a little bit and tell us how the G20's infrastructure investment agenda align with the continent's own development priorities.
Absolutely. So, if we look at the global infrastructure gap, it's projected to be about 15 trillion by 2040. Now, this is the global. And if we look at Africa, on our own, we require something like anything between 130 to 170 billion dollars on an annual basis in infrastructure investment. We really are at the precipice of where we should be as a continent. And there's an urgent need for coordinated action. And this is why you then have the G20 coming in and you get various institutions such as the PIC who are saying, how do we leverage this listed and unlisted funding to unlock this infrastructure development? And why is why is infrastructure key? Because ultimately it unlocks economic growth, industrialization, you've got jobs, it provides economic resilience. And of course, you're then able to achieve your SDGs. Now, earlier on, you had mentioned the 3.5% that African governments invest of the GDP. And in order to meet our SDGs, we should be investing on average about 7%. Now, if I look at China, they invest about 40% of their GDP in fixed capital formation. You then look at also India, they're doing about 30%. South Africa on our own, we're doing 13%, 13%. And as you rightfully said, this is woefully inadequate.
Let me come in there, Lungile. It's Ashraf Garda. Yeah, we've already touched on it as a starting point. For many infrastructure projects, you do need funding. Otherwise, you're just going to wait forever, right? So I understand that there are new, financing models being developed within the G20 framework. So what are they? And would they be specific or skewed to the challenges of African economies compared to others?
So a very key element, Ashraf, is, I think in the past, infrastructure was always assumed to be one monolithic sort of spend. It doesn't matter whether you're in China, whether in India, whether you're in Africa. And the truth of the matter is that it does not work like that at all. Africa has very unique challenges. And one of those challenges is around affordability, tariffs, inequality. There's the levels of poverty also. So naturally, when we're looking at funding, one needs to place an emphasis on blended finance model, where you're looking at public, you're looking at concessional, you are looking at private capital, but ultimately you want to make it as affordable as possible, because any infrastructure projects, it doesn't matter whether it's water, whether it's energy, ultimately results in a tariff that has to be paid by the end user. In the paper, we address, looking at listed instruments as well as unlisted instruments. And typically what you'd find along your unlisted is your debt, equity, your typical project finance. You've also got, like, on the listed side now, like your bonds and your green bonds is what we're seeing a lot of, especially for renewable energy projects. There's your real estate trusts, which are also coming in. But also what we're also seeing now is your listed infrastructure bonds, which have come in and they are providing equity providers or asset managers that space to play in the infrastructure space, and in a more honest and transparent way, and in a way where they can exit at any time that they need to actually exit for their own liquidity gains.
On a practical level, now, Lungile, you've mentioned the contents of your G20 perspective paper, which highlights listed and unlisted financing as rather important sources of private capital. Now, the Africa Finance Corporation has considered pension funds, for example, for infrastructure funding. You mentioned also the appetite that asset managers have, for these type of deals and for this type of flexibility. But how can this capital actually be accessed? And are asset managers willing to invest in public infrastructure?
Oh, absolutely. So asset managers are very keen and they're willing, and they are currently running infrastructure books. The challenge that we're facing is that they're not as big as they should be. There's a preference for perhaps more safer and more risk averse books. And ultimately, in terms of how to unlock this capital, it's about looking at your regulatory reforms that expand on your investment mandates. And I'm going to give you an example now of what's been happening with Total Energies as well as Eskom and the regulator. These are all issues that could have been resolved via policy dialogues and regulation prior to where they find themselves like in court now, and it's a back and forth. On the back of this, you've got lenders who had committed money and are waiting to disburse, but now they've been stuck in legal action for an entire year. And money, unfortunately or fortunately, follows clarity. You also need bankable projects. With very clear risk return profiles. I think one of the mistakes that is made, especially around infrastructure in Africa, is the assumption that the risk is so high. The truth of the matter is you're going to see some of the lowest risk in Africa. Our infrastructure default lies at about 3% of projects. And the reason for this is because our projects are so over prepared that ultimately only the best projects get financed. So the whole lie that people like to come up with of, oh, but it's so risky investing. No, it is not. There are ways to manage risk. And one of those ways is looking at return. So is my risk adequately compensated in my return? And these are some of the things that especially private capital look for. And then, lastly, it's about enhancing the credit worthiness of off-takers. This can be done through risk insurance, can be done through guarantees, and of course, then improving the project structure that private capital would then have to invest in.
Interesting, and often we talk about it, the need for investment, but the sense that barriers to investment are just far too high. So when we talk about, lowering barriers to investment, how can that be driven through the collaboration between, public and private sectors? What can be done?
So one of the very important things are joint working groups that align policy with investor needs and reduce that regulatory fragmentation. And a practical example of this is how the Department of Public Works basically runs on a quarterly basis engagements with lenders in the infrastructure space, trying to understand what our requirements are, how they can de-risk projects, and how we can facilitate the faster movement of the pipeline ultimately. You also have like the Energy One-Stop Shop as another example, where an entity or a developer is able to go to one place and get everything done there in order to fast track their project. You also have the public sector, and this is now through National Treasury or through various other vehicles that can then offer guarantees. There can be co-investment opportunities to de-risk projects at an early stage. We also need to have conversations, and this goes back to the working groups and policy dialogues around procurement and around tax and legal frameworks. A lot of the challenges that we have are because things are not standardized. If I'm going to be investing in 150 projects, we're sitting literally with 150 off-takers, 150 project structures, and 150 contracts, and at times that's not feasible to actually go into, and it would be nice to have a standardized approach similar to what we saw in the renewable energy IPPs. And then just lastly, around a co-creation of pipeline. And like I explained that with the Department of Public Works, that's exactly what they do, where they say, we're developing this. Are the lenders willing to take this on? These are the costs. These are the risks. This is what vehicles we have in place. Are you willing to come on board? And let's sit on a quarterly basis and understand what we can and cannot do.
And before we let you go, Lungile, just really one quick question. So much focus here on development, right? But what about maintenance? Because around a third of the continent's infrastructure assets are in need of dire rehabilitation. Is that also being taken into account, or are these just greenfield projects that are starting from breaking ground?
For the most part, because you're referring to private capital, it is greenfield projects. But you make a very important point around maintenance and refurbishment. And I think one of the things that we always want to run and do are new cities and new tech things. Whereas just fix the roads, just fix the lights, just fix the windows. And some things are very simple fixes. But however, that requires very special, or not even special really, but it requires the ongoing budgeting governance within, whether it's a municipality or it's at national government level or it's at provincial level. And it's about ensuring that within those existing structures that are they budgeting adequately? Is there governance for what has to happen? Are they aware that they need to do maintenance and that you can't keep on building new things every other week? And I think those are conversations that need to happen specifically in those areas.
Mashele, thank you very much for that update this afternoon. Certainly a really interesting conversation and a focus. That's Lungile Mashele, co-author of the paper Using Listed and Unlisted Financial Instruments to Fund Infrastructure on the Continent. Ashraf, I tell you what, I mean, as you drive along our roads and you look at the level of dilapidation in some areas, one wonders, why are we constantly, striving for new when we can't even and are not even maintaining the old?
Well, maybe we need to strive to maintain the old, and maybe there's either a shortage of funds and therefore the need to get funding, as we've been discussing, or alternatively, the oft-repeated allegation that too much of these funds intended for that purpose has been siphoned off and they've just disappeared into thin air. So the big casualty of all of that is you and I and everybody else in the country that we represent.
Really, really great point. And also just a comparison on the quality and standard of work. You know, if you look at the infrastructure of, decades ago, of yesteryear, looking at what's been constructive today, some would argue that it pales in comparison as far as durability and the standard of workmanship is concerned.
And that's another whole conversation for those who are in that space who may answer that with a degree of expertise. But I think the point is taken. We're gonna pause there for now, of course, right? Good to connect with you as always.
That was Ashraf Garda there from SAFM with the National Pulse. And that's how we conclude this afternoon's G20 infrastructure funding.
Okay. And that's where we leave it. We'll connect again next week around this time. Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, pieces of a light aircraft that crashed into the sea at Durban Suncoast Beach are being removed from the water, while search and rescue workers are busy looking for the occupant of the plane. Eswatini police say 3 suspects wanted in connection with the murder of a police officer in Schoemansdal in Mpumalanga a week ago have been killed in Eswatini. And Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich says that his approval of plans to build more than 3,000 homes in West Bank settlement will bury the idea of a Palestinian state. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Right, let me just remind you as well, more to come. We're going to get Tumi coming up just now. We'll also chat to Pali Lahotla in just a moment or so. And he's going to comment about this conversation that we've been having for the last month, I think it is, the National Dialogue. Well, the National Convention of the National Dialogue, as you know, is imminent. It happens tomorrow. We will be broadcasting from UNISA's buildings in Pretoria tomorrow. But it doesn't mean that Pali Lahotla supports it. He thinks it should have been done a long time ago, and it's a bit of a waste. We'll talk to him about that too.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound in Bedfordview, queuing on the link to the N12 east at Giluli's interchange. Christina de Wet Avenue southbound in Pretoria, slow moving towards Euphues Road, and the M1 southbound queuing towards Boysons. In KZN, the M7 westbound queuing at Bel Air Wakesley Road Junction. The R102 southbound is queuing towards the M25 Commercial Highway, and the N3 eastbound, a crash reported before the Hummersdale exit. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a stationary truck on Plattekloof Hill, the N2 outbound is slow moving towards Bunga Avenue, and the M5 southbound slow moving towards Racecourse Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Khapele.
To me, I understand there's news about the Soweto Marathon.
Yeah, the non-profit company spokesperson Jabu Mbuli has confirmed that the 30th edition of the Soweto Marathon will be launched end of this month. Every year there's speculation around whether the race will go ahead, but the NPC has assured that the marathon is on. The race will reportedly take place at the end of November rather than on the originally planned 3rd of November date due to the G20 summit taking place at Nasrec from the 21st to the 22nd of November. In rugby, former Springbok captain John Smith reckons that this season's rugby championship could be tougher. This is based purely on the fact that South Africa have to travel away to face New Zealand. The Southern Hemisphere Rugby Union competition kicks off on Saturday with the Boks hosting Australia at Ellis Park before Argentina face the All Blacks. And Smith believes that hosting the Wallabies and visiting the Kiwis this year could prove more challenging than having it the other way around.
So rugby championship is always a big part of the influence of a championship is who you face at home, and so I think it's always easier when you're facing the All Blacks at home, and so this year we've got them away twice. I think the good news is that we've got the start to our championship is at home against Australia, and again we've got an Australian team that's come off 3 really tough tests and have actually been really competitive. The margins were small. Actually, it's a series they probably could have pulled off as well. And it doesn't matter who you play in that June test period. Any team of the All Blacks, Australia or South Africa that gets to play against the Lions comes into the championship a little bit sharper than anyone else because they've had that battle hardness sort of drilled into them.
Well, South Africa are all set to battle it out with Niger in the 2025 African Nations Championship Group C match at the Mandela National Stadium in Uganda tomorrow. Both countries have no suspension concerns coming into this match, but the Menas could be without Theodore Jules, who was substituted in the second half against Uganda due to an injury. In the meantime, Liverpool have agreed a deal with to sign Parma defender Giovanni Leoni. An agreement was reached late last night, and the fee for the 18-year-old is around £26 million, which is around 620 million rand plus add-ons. Leoni now has permission to travel to Liverpool to agree personal terms and undergo a medical, which is expected to begin today. Then in cricket, Proteas batter Tristan Stubbs says that Develd Brevis stays in. That the Proteas will be hoping that Develd Brevis stays in form until next year's T20 World Cup in India and Sri Lanka. Brevis hit an unbeaten 125 from 56 deliveries and now has the record for the highest T20 score for South Africa. And Stubbs says that Brevis' confidence in his batting abilities bodes well for the team going forward.
I changed the umpire. I was like, we got the best seat in the house here. I had the easiest job, just get him on strike, and then honestly just watch him do his thing. There was like few balls where I thought about chatting to him, and I was like, actually just the balls I was like thought about telling him to not do anything. He hit for 6, so yeah, he's a freak.
In tennis, world number 1 Jannik Sinner reached the Cincinnati Open quarterfinals with a 6-4, 7-6 win over Adrian Manarino. Sinner quickly took control of the match when he broke the 37-year-old in the third game, and play was suspended for rain, with Sinner 40-30 in serve and 2-1 down in the second set before the players resumed about 2 hours and 45 minutes later. That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, lots to come. Looking forward to that with you, Chumi, and seeing if Chiefs fans are gloating. I'm just making the point. The world is very strange, yeah.
The boardroom heat is on and the pressure is rising. The Insurance Apprentice, hosted by the one and only Babi Moloi, is delivering drama, tough decisions, and big personalities every week. Expect bold moves, emotional twists, and contestants you'll either root for or roast. And yes, you'll be surprised what you learn about insurance along the way. Open up to the Insurance Apprentice, Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The reigning champs, Amapaganeya, want to demonstrate that they have a consistent winning formula. But 2024 semi-finalists, Masandawana, say this time around they will advance to the final. This is the MTN 8 First Leg semi-final. Wafa wafa! Catch Orlando Pirates versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday, 16 August at 2 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Angolans and the Congolese have a glittering 90 minutes to demonstrate who will dominate the Central African Derby. This is the Total Energies African Nations Championship 2024. Catch the thrilling clash between Angola and Democratic Republic of Congo this Thursday, 14 August at 7 p.m. Live everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Do you know what's hiding behind colorful packaging of unhealthy food? Big food companies target children with unhealthy packaged foods that hide high levels of sugar, salt, and fat, which could lead to heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. But the truth is hidden from consumers. Front of package warning labels are a proven solution to help consumers make informed decisions. The government must act now. We have the right to know what's in our food. Demand front of package warning labels. Sign the petition on heala.org, HEALA.org by 30 September.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, we'll chat to Party the hotline in a moment, but for now, Baswane Mpatlele is with me from Markway Fund Managers. You could news about Standard Bank, right?
Yeah, good news on the Blue Bank, the Standard Bank. They gave us a half yearly performance. And the June, this is the biggest bank in Africa with around 20 operating in 21 markets in the continent. They reported on a strong set of results. They achieved a return on equity around 19%, and the profits as per headline earnings per share 10%, driven by the business momentum that is going well for them. They've seen the likes of digital revenue up 21%, being very supportive. Fees and trading revenue remain solid, reflecting that they are able to diversify from the interest income. And the likes of the corporate investment banking doing well, although the private banking showed flat earnings. And when we look at the likes of Africa, the earnings growth is solid. The region is generated around 9.7 billion outside South Africa, a good buffer, where South Africa also did well, around 11 billion, but going forward there could be slight chances of weakness, especially when you consider the slow GDP and the tariff impact that will follow through. But overall, the bank is set to hit its 2025 targets with healthy capital levels and cost discipline, and they issued a dividend up 10%. And Ashraf, when we go into these market developments, it's a quiet day locally, and investors, as they digest all-time highs and global developments, that we see the likes of the U.S. producer price inflation rises in July, rose to a 3-year high, up 0.9% versus the expectation of 0.2. This follows a period where we just recently saw the CPI inflation that wasn't really soft. So it's signaling generally an inflation trend that is higher, and traders but remain generally optimistic of the September cut, and this is reflected in the bearish dollar we continue to see, and bond yields therefore, and they provide continuous support to emerging market currencies and financial markets. In the emerging market, gold has pulled back down 0.5% at $3,338 an ounce. Oil has rebounded from its lows 1.2% at $66.50 a barrel. And in general, when we look at the equity space, it's mixed. The US equities are generally flat, recovering from early trading lows, and while Europe, the DAX and CAC is up 0.6%. JSE's pulled back from all-time highs, down 0.5%. As resource sectors down 1.7%, industrials down 0.4%, and financials just up 0.2%. Overall, the trend in the market in the equity space is still intact on the idea that we should be buying the dip and volatility is low. But the rand is weaker today. We're seeing it. The rand against the dollar is 17.65, rand against the euro 20.55, and rand against the pound 23.89.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. Paswane and Mpatlele will do it again tomorrow, but don't forget 1 hour of the markets with Jimmy Moyaha coming up from 6 to 7 this evening.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, there's lots of people wanting to comment, and no surprise, one of the key drivers, can I say drivers, of the National Pulse today has been the taxi drivers.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Between these taxi drivers or taxi owners and e-hailing, I see a war here, really.
But isn't there a war already between them? It's been ongoing for such a long time, where one party is just hell-bent on saying, you don't come into my space. But should we look at it rather differently? Is there a different way to consider what the issues at stake are?
Good afternoon.
Are the problem in the country? Because it does suggest that the locals are not a problem, yet the taxis are owned by locals, and locals are a problem as well. Can you see how confusing all of that is? I mean, there's just lots of contradictions around that. But I'll tell you what, so we're going to get to Santaco just now as well, and I certainly welcome your thoughts on their position and in terms of what they feel. As someone has suggested, they're obviously going to deny it. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that is what is expected from most people anyway. Now here's a thought. I picked up a comment from Stephen Friedman, who said, think about this, okay? The real divide in this country is not that between the government and citizens. It is that between the 1/3 who are heard and the 2/3 who are not. The problem with the national dialogue is not that it is being run by government rather than private foundations. It is that it will give a platform to the minority we always hear, nor, rather, let me say that again, it'll give a platform to the minority we always hear, not the majority who need to be heard. There we are, Stephen Friedman. Does he have a point? We'll chat to Padi Lehotla in a moment.
Spar brings you super savings. Get 2 litre Spar Extra Shelf Life Milk, full cream or low fat for $31.99, plus 100 megs free data on Spar Mobile, or 200 gram Jacob's Cronin coffee jar or 230 gram refill for $144.99, plus 300 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Plus, you could win your share of 6 million rand in instant cash. Prices valid until 24 August 2025, while stocks last. T's and C's apply.
West Africans Niger are hunting for nothing but 3 points, while Bafana Bafana are pumped to achieve a win. This is the Total Energies African Nations Championship 2024. Niger confronts South Africa on Friday, 15 August at 7 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, the 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. All on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
What is that famous line, to be or not to be? That is the question. I suppose we could put that to Dr. Padi Lehotla around the national dialogue, which actually happens tomorrow. So in whichever form it's going to play out tomorrow, we're going to be there. The show, The National Pulse, talking about the pulse of a nation, reflecting on the national dialogue of a nation, right? So let's get the thoughts of Dr. Padi Lehotla. He's the former Statistician General and Professor of Practice at the University of Joburg. Padi, I appreciate your time as always. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Well, thank you very much, Ashraf, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Now, I would think that
very somber moment.
Much appreciated. I would think more than anybody else, you would always deal with facts, data to back up statements, right? Now, I mean, is it not fair to say that when we talk about the merits of the national dialogue, that in fact it can't just be the bad news, as many have suggested. It has to be both. There are elements of it that are really sound, and there are elements of it that are possibly rather weak. It can't be just both. It can't just be one of the two. Do you agree?
Well, it cannot be a binary, because I think if it becomes binary, then we will argue that we never had a moment of hope, which was when we were in 1994 and the years that followed. So like the 7 lean cows that got fat, or fat cows and then that got lean, or the lean heads of wheat in Egypt, we find ourselves in the lean period, and the leanest of them all. This is where we find ourselves. And when moments are very lean, fights begin and contestations begin. And I would argue that the contestation that is now here, in terms of some not going to the dialogue and others going, is the beginning of the dialogue. You cannot say that is not the dialogue. It is now the dialogue. However, one would have wished that a postponement would have been accommodated so that we start on a rather collegial started.
So
But now-
you're suggesting that what even now the dialogue should be postponed?
I would argue that it should be postponed because the rush is not helpful. If we are going to say now we are leaving other stakeholders outside, which brings to the center my observation right in 2023 that the election must be postponed so that we could have the national dialogue. The problem, Ashraf, is that incumbency breeds a dictatorship and bravado of sorts. And now that people are in government, they think they can do as they wish. And I think that's the problem. Whereas if we were equal before the election and had a national dialogue, this bravado would have not happened.
But so you're saying, if I hear you correctly, that you believe. I think I remember chatting to you, before the elections, and you called for the elections itself to be postponed around that time. But now you're saying that the national dialogue should have been held before the elections. But if that were the case, then you're talking about who's in government, then the ANC would have been in government at that time.
No. It would be facing an immediate election in 6 months because an election would have been held in August. And everybody would have been put on terms before an election. Now they have a 5-year mandate with the government of national unity. Whatever goes in the national dialogue might just go because of incumbency situation.
Okay, so now,
we are here now.
Right.
And now that we are here, and we go to the national dialogue, before the national dialogue, it's not different from the budget that never was. That is the situation. And this must be understood in the context of systemic failures at each point since the post-election period. But indeed, in the last 15 years, when we are confronted by declines in substantive democracy in terms of benefits to society.
Okay, so let's take the events of the last few days. First of all, significant foundations, as was been termed the legacy foundation. So basically the big hitters of the foundations, right, with strong political ties, they've all pulled out of the National Convention, the opening really of the national dialogue, and that'll happen tomorrow, in fact, right? And then there's been a few other political parties. The DA did it a while back, I think, in protest against some of the ANC decisions. We've had other political parties, Action SA, saying they'll be observers now. Now, to what degree has that weakened whatever mandate, if I can call it, that the national dialogue may have had or not?
I think we should understand it in two ways. The first, that we are so divided as we go into this very solemn period, reflects the depth of the problem. And I think we should understand that the problem is so deep and so severe. That's the benefit of the divisions that are emerging. The second is that probably we are ill prepared to go into that space. And we are able to rescue a situation that is dire. And I think this moment gives us respite to really reconnect with ourselves. Because the dialogue has started, and Panagi has started the dialogue anyway. When you stood up and said, this country is crime hidden and we lose it. Now, the issue of when it starts really should have not, my point of view is that it shouldn't have started before we all come together, because a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even a month of preparation is something that we require so that we have a consensus before we start. But even then, this is not going to stop the dialogue, because the dialogue will continue in the streets. But the inaugural session is certainly will be mired and will mark, will be a blot on the beginning of this process.
Okay, so notwithstanding the issues you've raised and the problems we find ourselves in, I mean, as it stands, barring some miracle of sorts, that national dialogue will kickstart tomorrow with the beginning of the formation of the National Convention, right? And as you know, there's a whole series of people that are made up of what is called the Eminent Persons Group, right? So let's say some may say it's been hamstrung, but having been hamstrung in some way, what then do you expect to come out of the national dialogue anyway, notwithstanding your initial points?
For me, the national dialogue is this. It's a mirror. We are constructing a mirror. And that mirror maybe will take 12 months to construct. And when we look ourselves in that mirror at the end, regardless of how we started, the fact of the matter should be when we see that there's something wrong in that mirror, we should not waste one more day to call for a national election. Because in the first instance, what we are talking about is really one single factor, which is the quality and type of leadership. That's the biggest problem we have in this country. And if we find that the leadership is the problem, then we don't have to waste time and call for an election. Because the national dialogue must define who is the leader. And not just a leader, but a responsible leader. I think the national dialogue must draw from Morenam Mfulu of the Basotho Nation, who was a philosopher who was born in 1723 and died in 1830. What he does is to define a responsible leader. And I think in our leadership, the leadership deficits we have are that of responsible leadership.
What do you make? You may have heard at the intro. I quoted Prof. Stephen Friedman, in fact, making the point that the issue with the national dialogue is not so much, who's running it and what role government is playing, but the fact that the 1/3 of South Africans that have already got the voice, I suppose in many ways people like yourself, I mean, not that you're being part of it, but that sort of example, that 1/3 who has the voice versus the 2/3 who don't have the voice, the 1/3 will have the voice through the national dialogue, and the 2/3 who don't have the voice will remain outside and will remain voiceless.
You come again in there. I think that the reception has been so bad.
Oh, I see. Okay, well,
there was too much echo in the question.
All right, maybe it's a wonderful Freudian slip around it, because what I am saying is Stephen Friedman made the point that the 1/3 that has a voice will continue having the voice through the national dialogue, and the 2/3 of the South Africans that don't have a voice will continue not having a voice, even when the national dialogue kicks off. And that's the biggest problem of the national dialogue. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think I would agree with that, but not completely, because at some point there has to be a process that involves everybody. The question is, will this process involve everybody? I suspect it could, and it should. What I think the outcome of it for me is the question of defining responsible leadership, and therefore setting the frame for getting that leadership in place. Having said that, I say that there is no point wasting time when we have identified where the problem is. We must solve it immediately. If we don't do that, then we are not sending a message to responsible leadership.
So just the last thought, okay? We all know that the CODESA talks were significant in finally achieving a negotiated settlement, and then the date for that first election, and then the actual first election, right? When you then compare the importance of the CODESA talks to the importance of the national dialogue, however flawed it may be, how would you stack them up one against the other?
You remember the crisis that we had in 1993 April. In the middle of the CODESA talks, what did Mandela do? He declared the date of the election. I compared the national dialogue at that moment, when the outcome of the dialogue is a decision on how people choose. And we shouldn't wait for the mechanical cycle of elections. We must respect the material conditions that democracy brings. And that expression of democracy can be any time. when the material conditions have changed and when we have to deal with the matters of leadership.
Okay, and that's where we shall leave it. Dr. Pandile Hotla, appreciate your time. The national dialogue, to be or not to be, isn't it? We'll be there tomorrow in whichever form it plays out, and we'll cover it here on the National Pulse. Right now, let's get to the news. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. Search underway at Durban Beach after plane crash and alleged police killers gunned down in Eswatini. Good day to you. Pieces of a light aircraft that crashed into the sea at Durban Suncoast Beach are being removed from the water while search and rescue workers are busy looking for the occupant of the plane. The plane crashed earlier this afternoon. In a video on social media that ALS paramedics made available, the aircraft made a turn before losing height and crashing into the ocean. Jade Paulser reports.
Rubbish. I can actually see some of the remains of that light aircraft just being taken out of the water. And like I said, visibility from where I'm standing right now is very, very difficult because we've been asked to move off the beach. But this is what we have.
Police in Eswatini say 3 suspects wanted in connection with the murder of a police officer in Mpumalanga a week ago have now been killed in Eswatini. 2 of them opened fire when they spotted police who then returned fire. South Africa's police spokesperson Atlanta Mate.
Thursday, early hours of the 14th of August, the Royal Eswatini Police traced these 3 suspects. The first 2 suspects were shot at a hideout in the Sishweleni region in Eswatini. They were fatally wounded as they charged at police when police announced their arrival. The third suspect was then also located in the same vicinity. He allegedly committed suicide before police could arrest him.
Police officer Lawrence Mshweni was the policeman shot and killed in the business robbery involving the 7 suspects in Schoemansdal and in Mpumalanga on Friday. According to the police, a suspect was arrested the following day, and further investigation then pointed to the involvement of the men in Eswatini. Mshweni will be laid to rest this Saturday in Schoemansdal. Police say the circumstances surrounding the crash in which 6 people died in Limpopo have not yet been established. 5 inmates and a police officer died on the R101, while 7 people were injured after the van they were travelling in overturned. Police spokesperson Khulani Mashaba.
I am told that both the truck and the police vehicle were travelling en route to Naboomspruit. But as you can see that we are in an intersection, I'm told that the truck tried to turn to the direction of the right, and then our police van was travelling towards the direction of Naboomspruit. But circumstances surrounding this tragic accident is currently being investigated by the role players. All role players are here, the traffic police are here, the police are here, and the emergency medical personnel are here.
Israel's Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich says his approval of plans to build more than 3,000 homes in a West Bank settlement will bury the idea of a Palestinian state. This comes amid global concern about the plight of Palestinians in the West Bank in Gaza. Israel launched a major operation against Hamas in Gaza after the October 7, 2023 attack by Hamas. Smotrich told the media that the scheme has the backing of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Anyone who tries today to recognize a Palestinian state will receive an answer from us on the ground, not in documents, not in decisions or declarations, but in facts. In the facts of houses, in the facts of neighborhoods, roads, and more Jewish families building lives. They will talk about the false Palestinian dream. We will continue to build a fulfilling Jewish reality.
Top story. Pieces of a light aircraft that crashed into the sea at Durban Suncoast Beach are being removed from the water while search and rescue workers are busy looking for the occupant of the plane. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Hus.
In sports, NPC to launch 2025 Soweto Marathon edition end of August. And we talk all things South African Paddle Invitational. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Spruitview has a crash reported before Leondale Road exit. The N12 eastbound in Germiston has a crash before Craft Road, and the N3 both ways in Alexandra queuing at London Road due to a crash in the area. In KZN, the N3 eastbound queuing towards Key Ridge, Umgeni Road westbound is slow moving through Springfield Park, and the N3 is queuing on the link to the N2 south at Spaghetti Junction. In Cape Town, Okaapseweg has a crash reported near Silver Mine Nature Reserve. Palmyra Road southbound is queuing towards Stanhope Road, and Marine Drive outbound in Pardon Island queuing towards Boundary Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The reigning champs, Amapagania, want to demonstrate that they have a consistent winning formula. But 2024 semi-finalists, Masandawana, say this time around they will advance to the final. This is the MTN 8 first leg semi-final. Wafa wafa! Catch Orlando Pirates versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday, 16 August at 2 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
It is time to experience spectacular football talent from 19 African nations. East Africa is on full vibration. From Tanzania, Kenya to Uganda, the pitch personnel are hungry for continental glory. This is the Total Energies African Nations Championship 2024. Witness Jan 2024 on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 from 2 to 30 August 2025. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This Women's Month, SAFM stands with the women shaping South Africa's future. Under the theme, Building Resilient Economies for All, we honor the pioneers, the problem solvers, and the everyday heroes driving change. Stay tuned as SAFM brings you powerful stories and meaningful conversations that move us. SAFM, celebrating women, celebrating progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And you know that the conversation I had with Dr. Pali Lehotla will be up as a podcast imminently so. We'll tweet it out firstly, but also available safm.co.za. Just check it out there, as everything else that we do on the show. So please listen, download, share with your friends, WhatsApp it. I mean, that's a big conduit for sharing information. You can have that debate with them over supper or anytime over the weekend. In fact, I wonder what you think. Reaction to Pali Lehotla's comments regarding the national dialogue that, in fact, it's problematic and should have been held before last year's elections. Well, it's now before next year's election, the local election. Well, what do we make of that story of the e-drivers or the e-hailing drivers in Soweto? You may have heard about it last night. The news came through that 2 taxi drivers, have been accused of intimidating e-hailing drivers. We understand that 2 cars were burnt. Effectively, e-hailing drivers, the cars were burnt. And then two drivers injured. One of them was shot dead, right? Now, earlier on, we chatted to, we got a response certainly from the SABC reporter covering the scene today. But let's get another thought with a member of the Soweto United E-Hailing Association, and that's Vatuka Imbelengwa. Vatuka, appreciate your time. You're the National Pulse.
Good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, I mean, it's very clear, Vatuka, that this problem that's occurred is not isolated. I think every few months we hear something very, very similar. So when we all saddened by the reality, it's bound to be repeating again in a few months' time, isn't it?
Yes, it's actually quite a normal occurrence now, and it's just the media cycle that gives it a lot of hype. But the reality is people are dying on a regular basis in this industry, and it's simply because there's no regulation. There's no oversight bodies, there's no oversight mechanisms, there's no instruments in place to ensure that people are behaving and operating within the right framework.
So when you say there's no regulation, I mean, you represent the E-Hailing Association in Soweto. What does no regulation mean? Tell me more.
Well, regulatory perspective, what we are pursuant of. And just as a point of clarity, I speak on behalf of the National E-Hailing Federation of South Africa now. It's a new appointment. As a point of clarity, what we want as regulation and the sort of regulation we're pursuant for will bring about an ecosystem within transportation that will allow us to work in a healthy, complementary environment that allows for healthy competition. Not the kind of environment that exists now, whereby the reality is each operating entity is undermining the other. You know, the minibus taxi industries are being greatly undermined, but e-hailing drivers are also being greatly exploited by app companies because they're not opening up the dialogue platform. They're not engaging in a fruitful and intentful manner to ensure that a healthy industry comes about. So this is the circumstance we're faced with, that we don't have ethical leadership. Government, the custodian of industry, is not deploying mechanisms to ensure that this industry functions properly.
So what would you like to see? I mean, in terms of where you come from now as part of this now united body, what would you like to see that is, you know, you use the word exploiting. So the opposite of exploit is create a win-win situation across the board between, you know, competing interests, all in the commuter transport business, all wanting to survive and thrive, right? What for you would be a win-win solution?
A win-win solution would be for a regulatory body to be established that will firstly define each operating model and define the parameters and the pricing instruments that should be deployed to ensure we don't find ourselves in a situation whereby each sector of public transportation is undermining the pricing within the other space. Now, when you really deep dive into the pricing strategy into e-hailing and the way the pricing is set, at times a car that has 4 people is charging less than a taxi for a short trip within a similar radius, which then gives way to unhealthy competition. This is why the traditional minibus taxi industry is feeling undermined. And we can't continually as a nation simply say, look at those animals. The grievance is genuine, and this can be prevented. We've been having one conversation for a decade.
Okay, you raised something that, you know, we've never really spoken about before. So you're saying, assuming a trip is 50 rands, just for example, in probably a 5-kilometer trip, but if there's 2 people, that's one thing. But if there's 4 people in the car, then they per head are paying far less than they would have ever paid if they actually went from another form of public transport, yeah?
Yes, this is the reality. And then what then happens, especially in close-knit communities or small communities where the trip radius is short, like Maponya, for example, it becomes an unhealthy direct competitive operator with your local taxi operators. Hence, a regulated environment can clearly define that this is e-hailing, this is the price point it should operate within. These are minibus taxis, this is the price point. This is the operational methodology that needs to be applied across each. And therefore, once those parameters are clear and set, the ecosystem can therefore exist.
So, I mean, when we say that there needs to be greater regulation, I mean, it may give the impression there are no regulations, which is also not true, isn't it? I mean, what do we have on the table right now?
Well, the regulatory base we can then look towards is that stems from the meter taxi era, you know, because ultimately e-hailing is just a tech base. It's a new methodology of billing, really, from the meter, but the service remains essentially the same. So should we apply that kind of regulatory framework, it won't apply to this new age digitized era. We need to reimagine how public transport functions. And we need a ministry that can have a visionary leader to therefore deploy the kind of instruments needed for this tech-based era. So, for example, there was a start point and an end point, or a start point for meter taxis, usually at a mall, and then after the trip, they return back to that same place. E-hailing has moved that away. So we therefore need to reimagine how we manage how many public transport operators we allow to deploy into any economic hub. Technology can aid us and guide us in deploying these kind of solutions.
Okay, so while we talk about it, and we've also chatted to e-hailing drivers or owners in the past, and they feel as well, even whether it's, the Ubers of the world or Bolt, even they feel they're being shortchanged by them. And you made the point about the lack of dialogue internally. So that's another conversation. But for now, do you take it that between the different factions, so from an e-hailing to traditional taxis to, let's call them the combi taxis or the Zola Buds, that in fact it is a turf war that's playing out every week, if not every day, and it's playing out in a very dangerous way if you think about it in terms of the laws of the jungle. People take over what they can get and therefore cause harm to others who are in their way.
I think it's not even to call it a turf war. I think it's the industry is about to implode because we have mass unemployment, and public transport is where people are running to survive. And there's only so many operators the industry can then adopt or can accommodate. And at the rate at which there's no regulation, there isn't a clear point of entry that defines how entrants come into the industry. It's being saturated. And organizations like Uber that are a law unto themselves can onboard vehicles at will. And we're saying within South Africa, it cannot be. Government is the custodian of industry. They need to regulate and control the participation of who's participating and ensure that there's enough economic value being delivered across the value chain.
So where you are now, right, I take it you would represent the interests of drivers who maybe contracted the Ubers and the Bolts and others on the one hand, right, and therefore e-hailing. But do you get a sense, therefore, when you say government needs to get on board and regulate, that in fact, and this is the question, why have they not done so up to now? Why have they left the rules of engagement completely open? Man, what a triggering question, because as a nation we have that question across so many things to say what's taking so long. And for me, it's not a matter of they don't know because we've been telling them. Is it a matter of they don't care? Possibly. Is it a matter of incompetence? I don't know. But maybe what we need to accept that we just need new leaders. We need new leadership. We need an engaging leadership. You understand? We find that, in the decade we've been engaging in e-hailing, we've had so many MMCs and MECs. And by the time a new political figure comes to make promises to us, their concepts around e-hailing are barely developed. They are highly, they're far behind in understanding the complexities of this industry. And therefore, we always get shortchanged with the kind of solutions because people are deploying solutions under pressure and they're not actually executing a strategy or a vision. Okay. Let's just end by this, right? What do you make of, well, in fact, two things. What do you make, again, of the violent outpouring yesterday, on the one hand, and then, of course, the commuters who, now having seen people die, and I'm talking around the Jabulani Mall, Maponya Mall rather, who are now making the point to say, in fact, the mall must be shut for a week, for 7 days of mourning. What do you make of that?
I think we need to accept that when communities begin to dictate that we're shutting down a mall, it is because there is no leadership within that space. There is no leadership with that society. There are no custodians for transportation. There are no custodians for law enforcement. And we have a collapse of societal leadership, and government needs to take its place and reassure its community that it will intervene correctly, because it's incorrect to shut a mall that employs so many people for 7 days. There are food concerns, there are hygiene concerns, there are other concerns, there are other economic impacts to consider.
And the last thing linked to that is, do you get a sense, in the absence of the regulatory framework that you spoke about early on, that in fact there's a sense of lawlessness in that industry, that in fact if somebody does feel aggrieved, they will do what they want to get their way?
There is a sense of lawlessness because there are no custodians. Traditional bus industries have taken so many decisions. They've passed so many industry-taking decisions at Lekgotlas, and they are never enforced by government. And as though I hate the violence and it's terrible, we can't continue to kill each other. But what choice are we leaving our people when our government refuses to engage? When our government refuses to deploy a proper permitting regime, when our government refuses to put proper control so that they can be healthy and proper participation? What choice do we leave our people? Because there's no employment. We're getting desperate and more desperate. People have pressures.
Okay, well, those questions are there. Hopefully others will have answers. Vatuka Imbalengwa, the member of now, it's a nationwide United E-Hailing Association. Appreciate your time, and I think as he puts forward his answers, there's even more questions that will come through from that. This is the National Pulse.
4-time World Rugby champions, the Springboks, want to emphasize their winning mentality. However, the Wallabies are going all out to upset the reigning global champs. This is the Rugby Championship. Experience world-class rugby action. South Africa collides with Australia on Saturday, 16 August at 5:10, live on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
We've upgraded. Our new GIS-linked national address database lets us connect with you better than ever before. By visualizing licensed and unlicensed households nationwide, we can ensure timely communication. Our payment reminders are a crucial tool to help you stay compliant and avoid penalties, empowering you to take proactive steps. Efficient electronic communication helps us collect fees seamlessly, bolstering the SABC's mandate in line with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act. TV licenses. Pay yours, make a difference.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
By the way, myself and Tumi were talking that, in fact, when it comes to paddle, that fast-growing sport in South Africa, the SA Invitational event takes place at the Wanderers over the weekend. We'll talk about that to one of the organisers just now. But for now, the Free State's Health MEC is Monyatso Viceroy Mokhlati. And the MEC is concerned about a high number of medical negligence claims against the Provincial Health Department. Often, this stems from inadequate patient care and poor record keeping. Now, to address the problem, the department has now convened a 2-day medico-legal workshop that will come up with effective, resolution strategies across critical stakeholders. I would think solutions as well ultimately would be the bottom line to all that. So with me is Mr. Monyatso Viceroy Mokhlati, the Free State's MEC for Health. Appreciate your time, MEC. Thanks for connecting with us on the National Pulse. MEC, do I have you there?
Yes, I'm here, Ashraf.
All right, I'm glad I can certainly hear you now. Thank you so much for your time, right? So first, let's start with where the problem is. I mean, so what has been the problem and how has that played out in terms of this poor, record keeping and patient care? Tell me about that first.
I think there are a number of factors at play here, Ashraf. Our staff are under pressure. The demand for service is increasing. And in many instances, our staff have to run.
We may have just lost the MEC for a moment under that line. The staff will have to run, and we'll see if we can just get Keith to assist in connecting him. Maybe just a bad line for the moment. By the way, there's been an update on the President's program, I can tell you now, ahead of that all-important, right word? But it's important anyway. I'm talking about the National Convention, that opening really of the National Dialogue that will take place tomorrow. I understand there's like 1,000 people, so I understand, in terms of delegates that will be attending. Never mind those who have boycotted or walked out of it. There's at least 1,000 people who will be there. I think we do have the MEC back on the line. We have you there, right, MEC?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Apologies for the poor network.
No, it's fine, yeah. So I was asking about, we talk about medical negligence claims, which is the result of other problems. The first is the record keeping. Tell me what's happened there.
I was just explaining that many times our nurses and staff find themselves running between patients, and because of the high demand of service and the declining number of staff members, in many instances, some of our staff don't get a chance to record some of the things. And in the process, when there is litigation, if we do not have records, we are found on the wrong side of the law.
Okay. And how has that played out? I mean, you talk about the high numbers of medical negligence claims. I mean, that's really very disturbing. How high are the numbers? I mean, give me some idea.
We're looking at about more than 690 claims that we have received at the Department of Health in the Free State. And we're looking at a figure of just above 6 billion if one quantify the claims that we have received. But remember, all these claims have to go through the processes of the courts, whereby the figures will then be verified. The numbers will be quite lower than what we have. But even with that in mind, the figures are still too high, and I was really concerned about this. That is why I decided to convene this kind of workshop so that we can find ways to reduce the figures, but most importantly to improve the quality of service that we give to our clients.
Well, before we look at the workshop, so in terms of those claims, then what has happened with those negligence claims? You know, one is a claim, but what has been the outcome of them?
In many instances, we find that the records are untraceable of what really transpired. And unfortunately, because we can only rely on the medical records, we find that whatever that is being claimed, we are unable to defend ourselves. So that's one of the things that's really crippling us as the Department of Health in the Free State.
Okay, let's then talk about your workshop plans. Tell me more about it.
Yes, our workshop was focusing on a number of elements that are involved in this whole matter of litigations. And we have uncovered quite a lot of issues. But what is important is that we are going to process the information that we have received, which is coming from a number of our components. And I must indicate that from our side, the key areas where we find that we're receiving a lot of claims relates to maternity or childbirth. Those are most of our claims, and that's what we intend to be focusing on. We've also received advice from the SIU because they investigated some of the fictitious some of the suspected fictitious claims, and they have uncovered quite a number of them in a report that was presented by Dr. Motsoaledi, the Minister of Health, earlier. So we also drew at their wisdom. We also drew at the wisdom of the University of the Free State, as well as the National Department of Health, the Office of the Premier. So all these stakeholders came in and made presentations about what are the key leakages and what is it that can be done to address the situation. I must indicate that, Ashraf, that I'm confident that we emerge out of that workshop clear about where our problems are, and I have committed myself and the HOD that we're going to work out a plan to look into this. As we speak now, we are going to convene a similar meeting focusing only on maternity because that's our key leakage next month. Next month, we are reconvening to focus mainly on what really happens in the labor ward at childbirth and what is it that we're not doing right that gives rise to these high levels of litigations that are coming from that section of our facility.
Well, let's end with the human story around it. When you talk about maternity and negligence, share with us some anecdotes as how that's played out.
I didn't hear you clearly.
I was saying, we talk about negligence in the maternity ward, so in that space, how has it played out? Meaning, away from the numbers now, are there anecdotes you can share in terms of what has actually happened to people and families for them to actually file a medical negligence claim?
It's quite a number of things, but Ashraf, but let me indicate that the process of giving birth is a very complex process, and we, as healthcare practitioners, we are not homogeneous individuals. So assessment may differ from one person to the other, although the training is designed to standardize that whole process. So in some instances, it will be issues whereby we refer patients to a higher level of care facility at a bit of a late stage. Sometimes we take decisions for operations at a late stage, but there are some other elements that are involved in that process. But mainly is the issues that the decisions that have to be made may not have been made at the right time during the process of birth.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. MEC for Health in the Free State, MEC Monyatso Viceroy Mokhlati, much appreciate your time. And I think lots of questions, lots of answers coming out of that conversation. Central to that, poor health records, and therefore the issue of medical negligence and the need now for this medico-legal workshop. Well, maybe a means to an end, isn't it? 5:30, here's the news headlines with Greg.
Quick look at the headlines. The ad hoc committee established to probe allegations of threats to national security made by the KZN Provincial Commissioner is hoping to finalise its terms of reference as well as a draft programme by next week. The pilot, whose light aircraft crashed into the sea in Durban, was busy performing an aerial performance at the end of a conference in the city, and the US government says it's approved an arms deal with Nigeria worth almost $350 million. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 westbound in Alberton has a stationary truck before the R59 Reading interchange. The N1 northbound has a crash on the link to the N12 east at Diepkloof interchange, and the N1 southbound in Randburg has a crash at Malibongwe Drive. In KZN, Bel Air Road southbound queuing at the M7 highway, and the N3 eastbound queuing towards Key Ridge. In Cape Town, the R300 southbound queuing towards Stock Road exit. The N2 outbound has a crash before Robert Sobukwe Road, and Boys Drive southbound in Cork Bay queuing towards Main Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Khapele.
Right, to me, let's talk sport.
Well, the non-profit company spokesperson, Jabu Mbuli, has confirmed that the 30th edition of the Soweto Marathon will be launched end of this month. Every year, there's speculations around whether the race will go ahead, but the MPC has assured that the marathon will go on. The race will reportedly take place at the end of November rather than on the originally planned 3rd of November. This is due to the G20 summit taking place at Nasrec from the 21st to the 22nd of November. Meanwhile, Cape Town Spurs are reportedly taking their battle to Safa in a bid to block winger Asenele Velebai's free transfer to Kaizer Chiefs. The Soweto Giants have already unveiled Velebai as their player, even assigning him a jersey number just a day after the Premier Soccer League dispute resolution chamber cleared the move. According to SABC Sports, Spurs maintain that they still have a binding contract with the 22-year-old. This is despite their relegation to the amateur ranks. However, on Monday, the DRC ruled that the agreement was null and void because Spurs no longer hold professional status. Meanwhile, South Africa's UFC champion Dricus du Plessis is stepping back into the octagon this weekend for what could be the toughest fight of his career. In the headline fight of UFC 319 in Chicago, Still Knox is set to defend his UFC world middleweight title. This is against undefeated Khamzat Chimaev of Russia. This will be du Plessis' first fight since his unanimous decision win over Sean Strickland at the UFC 312 in Australia in February, and he says he's all set for his opponent.
I have to say, I think with a guy like Khamzat, he is an all-around fighter. Khamzat's just a guy who, we've seen this, he can strike, he can wrestle, he can grapple. But the thing is, I think in a fight like this, you know, in every single fight he's shot for that takedown very early on. And I think I don't see this fight being any different. But once you get into a position where this is 5 rounds, so we saw with the Whittaker fight, he didn't change his game plan because it was 5 rounds. He went full speed. 5 rounds, I've been there. I've been there multiple times. So that's where it's going to get tricky. Is wrestling is very energy draining. So if he is wrestling and he doesn't get his way, then he's going to have to deal with me and my wrestling and my striking because the fight is going longer. And
well, then let's move on to paddle. It's all systems go for the South African Paddle Invitational. It's going to start tomorrow until Sunday at the DP World Wanderers Stadium. 12 top international players are going to compete on African soil for the first time. And Ashraf, because you love paddle, I expect you to be there, right?
I think I'll be there. Friday, Saturday, Sunday for sure. Friday depends what time I get done with the national dialogue. I'll be at UNISA.
Okay.
Because we're doing the show from there. So hopefully for the 7 o'clock game, that's the plan. paddle at the Wanderers, strange one.
Yeah, it's a big one because it's the first time on African soil. We actually are joined on the line by one of the organizing committee for the SA Invitational, Mohammed Saluji. Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Welcome to the show. I must say, a big moment. The first time we're seeing a global paddle event on this level on African soil. I want to hear from you, though, why South Africa was the right place to host it.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys. So, yeah, I think we've seen the growth of paddle in this country over the last 2 years has been phenomenal. We're one of the fastest growing countries amongst the world. In terms of paddle courts, we've got around 340,000 players. And 2 years ago, we had close on to about 3,000. So that's a staggering growth in the last 2 years. And I think the paddle playing public was ready to see some international action. I think we're ready right now.
But if I can jump in there, I mean, of course, you're also part of an original organization called 360 Paddle, and you guys have now set up this SA Invitational. But I mean, I hear what you're saying, and of course, you know I enjoy the game, I follow it myself. But here's the question: I understand you've got 12 of the world's finest players in the country that'll be in action tomorrow, and they're predominantly Spaniards and Argentinians. But here's the point. Why would you have the audacity, and I say it in inverted commas, to pitch to get the 12 finest players in the world to play paddle in a country where it's still very much, it's a growing sport, but it's still fairly small?
So I think, Ashraf, we've seen every single weekend at some of the paddle courts around your local paddle courts, there's some sort of event happening. We've seen with a recent Diamond League fixture where we've got SA's best players on a Wednesday night. Killarney Country Club is packed to capacity, you know. And I think our paddle playing public is hungry for some great paddle action. So we took the decision. We know a lot of guys watch the Premier Paddle World Tour week in and week out. And that's the 24 rounds that happens through the year in different countries. South Africa is not on the calendar. So to give the paddle playing public something that's very similar to Premier Paddle, we wanted to put on the spectacle. And I think we couldn't do this without the top 12 players in the world.
Can I say that we can draw the analogy of the $1 million golf challenge at Sun City, where it's not a major, and they understood they had to attract the best to get us to go and watch those players play golf?
Absolutely. So what we're trying to do is something very similar. The format is very unique in the sense that we're breaking up pairs that play week in and week out together with each other. In this event, they'll be playing against each other. So I had lunch with a few of the players earlier today, and they're looking forward to it. I mean, they said it's not the usual format that they usually play for 24 and 28 weeks of the year. So it's something very different. And I think the world's eyes are on it. You see the attention that is generated globally via social media and the like. I think the world's eyes are on South Africa this weekend to see how these players actually play out in our invitational.
I was actually going to ask, have you had a chat with any of the players in terms of how they're feeling or the excitement around them playing in South Africa specifically?
So in true South African style, players started landing from earlier this week. And those that were already in the country today, we arranged a little trip out to one of the game lodges for them where they got to see the Big Five, most of them being European and Argentinian. So I think we take the Big Five for granted sometimes as South Africans. They were very keen. And a lot of players are still coming in. I was very fortunate to have lunch with world number 1 and world number 3 today. It's just an amazing experience. And I think they're very excited. I don't think they fully realize just how big the paddle market is in South Africa. So I think they're very surprised. And I think they're very excited to be here.
Okay, now interesting you say world number 1, world number 5. Now, if you ask me about football and you said name the top 5 players in the world, I could probably do that offhand. Maybe the same with cricket and rugby. I can't do that with paddle, and neither can Tumi, I'm sure about it. I'm trying to get her to watch her first paddle game, so maybe she'll come this weekend. But give us a sense of the names. Even if they're anonymous to us now, they could be well known in a few days' time.
So if you go out to a paddle court and you see the rackets that the guys are holding, you'll generally see the players' names on there. So you've got the likes of Ale Galan, you've got Arturo Coelho, you've got Augustine Tapia, you've got Martin Dineno. We've got a 17-time world champion also who's retired earlier this year, and he agreed to play the Invitational. So come out of retirement and play the Invitational. Fernando Velasquez Green. He is a legend of the sport. I'm actually sitting at the Wanderers right now while I'm chatting to you guys and watching him train. It's honestly, it's a spectacle. I think the TV screens don't do justice to the athleticism and the actual pace and trajectory of the ball. It's phenomenal watching these guys live.
All right, Mohammed, we're actually running out of time, but I'd want to know then what kind of lasting impact are you hoping an event of this sort will have on South Africa or the sport in the country?
Look, we're hoping to put South Africa on the global map with this year and be taken seriously and hopefully drive a catalyst for that 10-year-old currently to get involved in the sport. And one day when the sport does become an Olympic sport in the near future, we should have a team ready to send to the Olympics competing at a very high level.
I like the idea of South Africa world paddle champions one day. Listen, in 30 seconds, why the Wanderers as a venue, and what are your expectations in terms of the spectator support over the next 3 days?
So we looked at multiple indoor venues, Ashraf, and we just couldn't get right in terms of the height regulation for the ceilings. And it was natural that the Wanderers is an iconic venue for cricket. So we thought, why not partner up with them? It's a beautiful venue. As a cricket fan, I love sitting at the Wanderers. I think it's one of the most beautiful stadiums in the world. So why not? Why not at the Wanderers?
Well, there we are. From the Wanderers bull ring to the Wanderers paddle ring.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time to me. Last word to you.
Yeah, I think looking forward to that action, and I know that a lot of people are probably saying, okay, what about rugby? They actually also cater to the rugby fans because there might be screens there for them to watch. But Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us. Looking forward to all the action that's happening down at the DP Wanderers Stadium. With that said,
SAFM celebrates its 89th birthday this month by giving listeners an exclusive opportunity to attend the prestigious Joy of Jazz taking place at the Sandton Convention Centre from the 26th to the 28th of September 2025. To stand a chance to win these sought-after tickets, simply SMS SAFM 89 followed by your name to 41391 and stay tuned to SAFM as we could be calling you. SAFM is the official media partner for the Dipala stage at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. Entries open from the 7th of August and close on the 31st of August 2025. Winners will be randomly selected and called from the 1st of September 2025. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. T's and C's apply.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Jimmy, of course, Jimmy Moya hosts the SAFM Market Update, and he wants to talk about the Blue Bank, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. Yes, the Blue Bank, known as Standard Bank, gave us an update on their performance for the first 6 months of the year. We're going to speak to the Group Chief Executive of the bank and get a sense of how they are faring at this time. We're also going to have a conversation with the team at South African Breweries around women in the beer industry in celebration of Women's Month. Then we've got a conversation with the team at BLSA, Business Leadership South Africa. They've launched today a reform tracker that aims to track government reforms and the government reform process. National Treasury was invited to this as well. The Deputy Finance Minister spoke on that, and we're going to take a look at that with BLSA and take a look at the tracker and what we can expect from it. Then we've also got a conversation with the team at Merchant West, hoping to understand how to navigate your financial investments in times of market volatility and what tends to drive high times of market volatility. And then because it's Thursday, we wrap up the show with an SME of the week. This week's SME is a company called Pesto Princess, and I have the privilege of speaking to the founder in studio. She'll be joining me in studio to tell us more about her business and how she built it. Before we get to those conversations, of course, let's get a quick sense of where the markets closed out the day. It was a red day, unfortunately, on the equity front, but given that yesterday was a green day, given that we have been at all-time highs for quite some time, and that we are still above 100,000 points, it is expected every now and then that you will have a red day on the markets. So, quick look at what's been moving. If we look at equity markets, the bulk of the international markets were in mixed territory as well. All Asian markets were in the red, barring the ASX in Sydney. That was up about 0.4%. The Nikkei in Tokyo was down 1.4%. In European markets, the FTSE was down, slightly flat, or on the flatter side of things, down about 3 basis points. But the Nasdaq, the DAX was up about 0.75%, and the CAC 40 in France was also up about 0.7%. So European markets faring decently throughout the day. If we look at US markets at the moment, they are marginally flat, with the Nasdaq slightly in positive territory, about 2 basis points up there. But that, of course, will go trading into the evening. The Dow Jones, the futures, the S&P all in the red at the moment. Local markets, resources down 1.25%, financials up 0.45%, but that wasn't enough because industrials were also down a third, and as a result, the all share was down a third, and the top 40 was down about 0.33% there as well. The Rand, 17 Rand 66 against the US dollar, bouncing off that 17.50 level we saw yesterday. Against the British pound, 23 Rand 90. 1 euro will set you back 20 Rand and 57 cents. 1 Australian dollar, 11 Rand 46. 1 Bitcoin, $118,000 a Bitcoin, or in Rand terms, around 2,088,000 odd Rand there. Quick look at commodities before we wrap up. Gold price, $3,342 a fine ounce. Brent crude, $66.25 a barrel. Platinum and palladium, more positive days today. $1,360 in the case of platinum, $1,152 in the case of palladium. I have Skulk Low of PSG Old Oak joining me on markets tonight. We're going to take a look at some of these movements and see what we make of them heading into the middle of the month of August. But of course, that conversation comes up after the 6 p.m. news. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
All right, perfect. Thanks for that, Jimmy. 6 to 7, enjoy that. And then sport coming up from 7 to 8 tonight. And don't forget, tomorrow's show will come to you from UNISA. Like it or not, it is the national dialogue that we'll cover on the National Pulse. But I'll get you on the pulse. I need to get your fingers on the pulse in a moment.
Iman, can you believe my Gogo reads with me every single night?
My dad plays soccer with me.
But my dad walks me to school every single day.
My mom works all day and I love it when she arrives home and gives me a big squishy hug. Oh man, we're so loved.
What did you do today? Visit
holdmyhand.org.za.
Together, we can change their future. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Kathy Motlatlana on SAFM.
Aya, let me start with you because you are currently in Gaza and I guess you're seeing and experiencing firsthand.
Each day begins with a battle of uncertainty, a battle of searching for food. Will we find food? Will we find water? Will we survive the next airstrike? So here, everything is a battle of survival. People walk for hours just to fetch a small amount of unclean water. There is no running water in most places. Families here are forced to cook, if they have anything to cook, over wood, plastic or trash or something like that, because no cooking gas here is no longer available. Children collect anything to burn.
Aya El Mashharawi, who's an academic lecturer in the Gaza Strip.
If you're ready to talk, I'm here to listen and nothing is off the agenda.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
All right, lots to come from you. Let's hear what you have to say on the issues we've spoken about so far. Well, not so far, we're almost at the end of the show. I did say the other day that there's no question this national dialogue has pushed its way to the top of the agenda, like it or not.
Ashraf, good afternoon. This Peter here. I don't understand people who are against the national dialogue. I mean, we are on national dialogue every day in your show, Kathy's show, Tulasi's, where people complaining about the lots of things, blaming politician, government saying they don't know what they are doing. Now we've got a platform whereby you will not only be complaining, but you'll be also influencing a directive by giving your proposals to the people that you say they don't know anything. So I don't understand why will you be against the national dialogue?
Maybe you have a point. It's not perfect. Like any negotiation, it can take months sometimes to reach an agreement. So if not national dialogue, then what?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Mongezi Tsendani. If I were to participate in the national dialogue, I would raise the issue of a university in Ekurhuleni. The metro does need a university. I mean, the population is 4.2 million, which is bigger than some of the cities that have universities or campuses. I do think that a university would add value in Ekurhuleni, but I don't know why the politicians are not raising that as a matter that they need to take forward into their manifestos. Thank you.
Okay, well, okay, you've put it on the agenda. In fact, still time to ask you, what would you, if you had the chance to be a delegate tomorrow and could raise an issue, what would you say? Rather, the issue of e-hailing naturally tops the agenda too.
In Kwakwa, we are not terrorized by the legal taxi operators, but by the pirate taxi organizers. Reckless driving, insults, but the municipality is quiet. The province is quiet about that. So this thing of taxis is all over South Africa. Anonymous, Puteri.
Okay, got that, and here's another.
Good day, Ashraf. This is Nati from Cape Town. I think once a person who owns a taxi, operates it with no subsidy, no nothing, and then has an e-hailing guy who comes at their space, they don't adhere to the laws of the country, they employ foreigners who drive there, and then they don't have a taxi rank, they would understand the pain that these guys are going through. I'm not saying violence is good, but run a business without subsidy and then you're competing with people with subsidy. Thank you.
Okay, got that, and here's another on that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Lux in Umtata. You know, the problem is people who do not board taxis might not understand how serious this matter is. Imagine one day when you go shop at Pep stores, they must come out and beat you why you had to go and shop at Jet stores. That's just the same thing. A business without competition is no business, whether it's for the blacks or whites, but a business is a business about competition. Thank you.
Okay, let's get to callers now to Durb. Well, I mean, I hear your point, Jet stores. You must be allowed, ultimately, to make a choice, isn't it? Lou in Durban, hello. You're live on the National Pulse. Go for it.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, good talking to you. Thank you.
I'm fine, Ashraf. Ashraf, I'm against the national dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Simple. One, it's a waste of money. And two, I don't think it will bear any positive fruits, you know. Because, you know, Ashraf, at first, the SABC had programs like Asikulume, that were run by Polan Nikwala, you know, where the communities used to engage directly with different, whether it's municipalities or the ministers or MECs and like. But the challenge, Ashraf, that I'm saying is, if we keep on trying to interact, especially with the president, because the president had an opportunity during COVID to have the family meetings, you know, what is difficult from creating such kind of platform and extending it so that people can be able to interact with him directly? Well, why do we need a national dialogue? You know,
okay.
I can hear the gentleman that was saying people are given platform and they are not being listened to. And my main worry, Ashraf, is the whole thing now that is cropping up where people now are opting for a coup, you know. And the government is not listening. It's not
well, all the more you need a dialogue of sorts, right? I get your point.
We need a dialogue, but not with this one, with this kind of dialogue. There are simple dialogues, Ashraf, not this with so much budget of 700 million. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, got that. Blue in Durban, right? Let's say Shine Limpopo, hello. What's your point?
Hello, Rob.
Yeah, you're live. What's your point?
How are you? My point is, I'm also, like the previous speaker, I'm against the national dialogue. What is the national dialogue all about? Because we've been making a lot of noise, trying to knock sense into our leaders, and then they never listen to us. And then they will tell you that these foreign nationals who are flooding our country. They helped them during the apartheid time. And then now, today, our country is ungovernable because of those foreign nationals who are busy killing our people and stuff like this. And now the ANC pays their friends. You know, you use our tax money to give life to your foreign nationals. Why don't you use your own money? Why ANC doesn't use its own money?
No, but because it's not. No, but it's not an ANC
South African
event.
government money.
Okay, you think they
Yes.
should use their own money?
They are supposed to use their own money. If you have got a guest in your own house, you give him you are paying him or her with your own money, not with our taxpayers.
Okay,
money.
point made. Right, let's move
Then
on,
you-
legislature. Let's move on. I hear your point. Let's move on. Magdalene in Bloemfontein, hello.
Do you think we've got a national dialogue? I don't think we're going to have a national dialogue. This is an ANC to act as if dialogue, not a national one, because if it was a national one, civil organizations like Dudula, Mangaung Service Delivery Forum, MCC, and other provinces' civil movement, whereby the people are voicing out consent, were the ones who were supposed to be invited.
Okay.
This one is not.
All right,
Thank you.
got that. Magdalene's made her point. You, of course, can make your point, right? Here's a name that we haven't spoken about for a few weeks.
Ashra, good afternoon. It's Paula here from MP. What these people need, they need Mkwanazi. I mean these taxi owners. They are law unto themselves and the government is not scared of them, is benefiting from their criminal activity. You see, they've deleted the railway transport system, the municipal bus transport system. Now they don't want anybody to operate taxis. No, let's call them Mkwanazi.
Interesting one. You're saying the government is not scared of them. It should almost be the other way around. They're not scared of government. Think about it.
Ashraf, good afternoon, man. Flores from the beautiful Western Cape. Ashraf, just listening to, again, another incident where 7 inmates and a policeman died. And yeah, I think it's time that we should install cameras in all our police vehicles. That way we can track them when they are off course, when they go into a direction where they're not supposed to, and also to see what's going on. What was the last talks in there? That should be really a priority. We are losing too many police men and women now, and all these incidents that they get shot in their own vehicles. Have a good show. Bye-bye.
Okay, good that. Florence from the beautiful Western Cape. Here's another.
Ashraf Skito here. Ashraf, if correct me if I'm mistaken. In South Africa, there are rules, laws, and constitution that govern who should pick up people, transport people. So you apply. So far, as far as I know, it's only taxi association that has that right of having a permit to operate. I'm not sure about others. I hear one of your callers saying that they have a right to pick up anyone in the street. No one has a right to do that. Let's not mislead people. Let's talk facts here. Thank you, Skits, and my respect.
No, but I think he's making the point that they can drive wherever, and if I call them, they can come to my house, which may not have been the case elsewhere. But I'll tell you what, we need to have a whole conversation just on the entire public transport industry, like around taxis, and just like what's allowed, what's not allowed, get a whole dip into it so we fully understand it, don't you think?
Alpha, good afternoon. No, the taxi people, they think that the bosses of this country. The problem in this country is the taxi people and the foreign nationals. Taxi people and the foreign nationals are the problem in this country, Alpha.
Sure, man. We touched on that before. Really?
Afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf is like police officers. They are not trained. It's really an embarrassment. You go to a police station, for example, Lenasia police station, to make an affidavit for proof of residence. They will tell you that by law, ma'am, if you don't reside in Lenasia area, we're not allowed to make an affidavit for you because we don't know where you stay. As if they know where you stay, they're gonna go and verify your address. It's an embarrassment. Thank you, boss.
I think there generally has been an acceptance of mediocrity in our public service across the board, isn't it?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Lux in Umtata. You know, the problem is people who do not board taxis might not understand how serious this matter is. Imagine one day when you go shop at Pep stores, they must come out and beat you why you had to go and shop at Jet stores. That's just the same thing. A business without competition is no business, whether it's for the blacks or whites, but a business is a business about competition. Thank you.
Okay. In fact, we played that earlier. I think some things just did not delete. My apology for that. Let's end the show with this point here. Good evening, Ashraf. I like the approach of the MEC of Health in Free State. It's proactive, and they are trying to solve an issue that affects them in their province directly. This is what leadership should look like. If you see things done wrong, come up with the solutions that will work and save the department some money, and the practitioners will handle patients with care. Well, that's the show. I can tell you now, from tomorrow morning, right through most of the day, we'll all be at the UNISA buildings in Pretoria. And guess what? We'll be covering the National Dialogue. Like it or not. This is the National Pulse. Thanks for listening. Here's the news with Greg Host at 6 o'clock.